Chapter 4593. There is a splendor of magnificence, and the gate of grandeur suddenly opens, the sword unparalleled in the air, the magical charm. Eyes seem to pierce through the chaos, through eternity, locking the great axe supreme. One side, like the Tongtian giant finger that carried the ancient and desolate divine power, protruded from the suddenly opened Tianmen. Magnificent, coming with one finger. It seemed that the axe who wanted to split the dome of chaos hit the giant finger. However, it was just a breath away. Thousands of cracks appeared from the surface of the axe, and the surging divine power poured out. The celestial axe hit the heavenly giant finger of Tianmen, and even without a breath, it broke directly. The treasure phase was destroyed, and the chaos gas field was severely damaged. The supreme axe was directly blasted away from afar, and the breath instantly fainted to the extreme. However, that giant finger only paused for a moment, and then he continued to run towards the great axe. On the ground, Tina, supreme, changed his face instantly, urging her figure to ascend directly to the dojo. One palm, the bow started, and the tentacle shot thousands of gods in succession in order to deter the big, horrible finger. Tian Wei, Huang Huang's divine power emerged from the open heavenly gates, which nourished the Tongtian giant fingers continuously. Thousands of gods' mansions released from the invincible supreme realm just left a faint trace on the giant finger, and even failed to stop it. The Tongtian giant finger is still sinking and pressing, and the gushing pressure from the heavenly gate is completely suppressed even by the figures of the giant axe and the heavenly supreme. The king of Jujia also saw that something was wrong. As soon as his footsteps were pressed, his body swept into the dojo without hesitation. The black pattern emerged from his entire body, and the vast divine power emanating from the state of extreme supremacy and half-step invincibility emanated. A phantom with naked tops and looming gods appeared from behind Zhijiawang, and then he and the phantom behind him smashed into the finger. Boom! The dojo shattered instantaneously. The shadow behind King Nine Calamity dimmed instantly, and the blood of God poured out from the corner of his mouth. Sober me up, sword unparalleled. The gums were stained with blood, and the King of Nine Kings roared. The giant axe and the heavenly supreme glanced at each other, and also called their respective treasures, and slammed into the heavenly giant finger together. However, an incredible scene appeared for everyone. 2 invincible supreme treasure phases, and 1 top-level supreme treasure phase, only blocked for a few breaths of time. And then they were all broken. The irresistible Tongtian giant finger continues to run down. Not good. Lon Lon trembled in her heart, ascended to the broken dojo, and released the magical power directly. Then, the frost was soaring. 300 primary supreme, more than 10,000 ultimate masters, also at this moment ascended the sky, facing the giant fingers, twisted into a rope, released their own power. Jian Wushuang is very painful. In his barren and empty consciousness, he has long been lost in it. That heavenly gate was created by Jian Wushuang's understanding of the mysterious ancestral art left by the God of God in his memory. This is the ancestral stroke of transcending the supreme divine realm, and will grow as the user's realm grows. Jian Wushuang used his own half-step invincible state, and used the ancestor technique that should not belong to him. Lost is already the best result. His consciousness was in the hands of no one. Ancestral art the gate of power world. The sword Wushuang volleys above the sky, and the whole body is covered with red gold gods, like an ancient supreme being. As the voice fell, the giant finger on that side easily crushed the barrier of gods composed of 10,000 people. The horror of life and death under the palm of the virtual suddenly burst into my heart. Thousands of disciples are pale and unavoidable. The King of Nine Kings showed a bitter face, watching the sword Wushuang with his eyes closed in the sky. He slowly closed his eyes and then suddenly said, "You guys, you must give me a good life." Suddenly, as the wind blows the sea, the spring water melts. A heavy finger hovering over everyone's head. "Hurry, leave soon." Jian Wushuang's strenuous voice sounded openly. Looking intently, I saw Jian Wushuang hanging in the heavens and the earth. The pupils were clear, and his arms dragged to keep the blow. The king of Jujia immediately responded, and the vigorous and powerful force came out, struggling to promote tens of thousands of disciples. After everyone was out of danger, the massive giant finger was down. The world is slightly discolored. Rumble. I don't know how long it took. The king of Jujia sounded a little bit of complaint. "You guy, let that blow go. Aren't you dead?" Sitting in front of a giant pit. The sword was awkward and rubbed his nose with embarrassment. "I was just trying to hit this shot. I didn't expect that the power was so scary that I fell into it." Jujia Wang shook his head, helplessly. "I have taken note of this matter. You will need to hold the zombie's head in the future to offset this. It was just a terrible blow, the great axe supreme feared. If it is on the battlefield, I am afraid that no one invincible supreme can take that one." Jian Wushuang replied, "That type of non-present day I can control. If I had not been awakened by the 9 calamities just now, the consequences would be unthinkable, so I would not use it on the battlefield." Noble Supreme nodded, and then said, "Master of the Wushuang Palace, shall we continue to realize in this place of tragedy, or will we go to the divine universe and fight the virtual universe?" Jian Wushuang thought for a moment, then said, "You will continue to work in this sad place, and I will go alone to the virtual universe to pick up those who should return, but cannot return." Guided those who should have returned, but could not return. The axe murmured supremely, and his body shook immediately. "Is the Lord of Dalian Palace still alive?" Tina shook likewise. Jian Wushuang did not deny or confirm. I had seen the Lord of the Tao Yen Palace in that Godland long ago when I was in the Void Universe. It was also at that time, and the Lord of the Tao Yen Palace gave it to me. And he passed me all his sentiments of enlightenment, and then the spirit disappeared. Because Bingyu Supreme fought against me at that time, I had no time to probe the traces of the life of the Lord of the Dalian Palace. Until now I want to come, the Lord of the Dalian Palace must still sleep there. Jian Wushuang sincerely said, "I will go to this place regardless of whether the main body of the Tao Yen Palace is dead or not, because he belongs to the divine universe, and even if he died, I will bring him back." The great axe supreme immediately kneeled in front of the sword without double-sided with the heavenly supreme, and the old tears crisscrossed. "Xia Wushuang Palace Lord, giant axe/Tina, obey the palace lord's orders until death. You don't have to be polite. The imaginary universe owes us, and I will ask for it one by one." Jian Wushuang held up the 2 of them, his eyes fixed. Jiu Jia came to the front of Jianwu, and Shun said, "This is a dangerous trip. I will go to the virtual universe with you, so I can take care of each other. Remember the first domain name in this book. Mobile website, reading URL. Chapter 4594. Jian Wushuang groaned slightly, shook his head, and said, "No, the goals of the 2 are too big, and they may be discovered at any time. And I have a secret method that can completely disguise the vanity of the virtual universe. It doesn't matter if I want to come and go." The king of 9 calamities didn't demand it either, and he didn't speak after saying a caution on the road. Jian Wushuang nodded his head, and then gave a detailed explanation to the giant axe and the heavenly supreme supremacy, then began to leave the tragedy. "Fu Jun, I can't help you anymore, so be careful all the way." There was a bitterness in Lung Rush Wang's eyes. "You are by my side, the greatest help to me. Without your years, it is true loneliness. Looking at this woman who has been resentment without regrets and has been with her so far, Jian Wushuang gently hugged. She then turned into a touch of Changhong and went to the exit of the sad land. The person with such a pure Taoist heart, the future of the master of the Wushuang Palace, I can't see through it even more. The giant axe looked at the sky, where Jian Wushuang disappeared, and murmured, stepping back into that dark and lonely passage. All the sorrowful sorrows disappeared, and even the grievances left by ancient times disappeared. Jian Wushuang began to vaguely feel that this side of the burial land seemed to be slowly dissipating in some form. What seemed to be an endless channel, but now it is at the end of a sword thought of Jian Wushuang. Stepping out of the quiet channel, the starless starfield appeared in front of Jian Wushuang. The starry sky 10,000 years later is no different from the starry sky 10,000 years ago. The only difference may be the residual force in the galaxy, the slightest force that is about to completely dissipate. Anyone from the void universe has been here. Jian Wushuang frowned slightly, looking at another emperor's site. The ruins that exuded a dark mist and separated the cosmic starry sky and existed independently are as unchanged as before. Thinking for a moment, Jian Wushuang waved out of the cosmic boat and drove away towards the distance. A few months later, in front of the fissure leading to the void universe, a young ranger wearing a wide black robe with a handsome and clear face stopped in front of the 23rd fissure. Since the two sides of the universe are still in the battle of catastrophe, from time to time, all parties step out of the cracks and head for the magical universe that has already opened its doors. At the same time, the various cracks leading to the divine universe have also strengthened the patrol guarding the virtual respect. Today, these 23 cracks have arranged nearly 15 four-marked virtual respects to be stationed, and at the same time, the terror that belongs to 6 marked virtual respects is surging in the dark. The young ranger dressed as a young man is naturally a sword unparalleled. His eyes were like a deep spring, and he came to the crack in one step. Who is it? A black mist emerged, and the patrol team, consisting of 3 four-marked virtual respects, stood in front of Jian Wushuang, showing vigilance. Masters, allies. Jian Wushuang chuckled, raising his hand to reveal a ray of weakness. Which star field are you from? And where did you respond to the call of the false god? One of the captains, four-marked vanity, still very vigilant, Jian Wushuang calmly said, Liang Star Field. Yu Huazong responded to the call of the virtual and ran to the magical universe 13,000 years ago. Then why are you returning alone now? Siken Shuzuan asked, shouldn't you be playing for Lord Shushan on the battlefield? Jian Wushuang didn't speak, and when he raised his hand, he took 3 black boxes from Qianquan Ring and gave them to the captain. A strange scent of medicine emerged from the box, and the 4 marks of imagination that were about to become angry saw the box of the robe immediately. I coughed a few times, and the 4-marked Su Zun exclaimed, I miss my homeland. Let's go home soon. The provincial family is worried. Sword Wusua promised, raised his foot, and prepared to step into the crack. The next moment, a repressive voice resounded from the dark. Slow. Suddenly, a faint sense of crisis came to my heart. Still was it found? Jian Wushuang stopped, and immediately in the deep crack in front of him stirred a powerful force. With the emergence of power, there was also a middle-aged man wearing a purple Jinhua suit. A few people who were still ecstatic were kneeling down on the ground after seeing the Comer. See, I've seen the 9-fingered emperor. The middle-aged man who attacked Zijinhua's clothes stayed on Jian Wushuang, and then he shouted, You are not a person in my virtual universe. Are you trying to enter because of cooperation? Is it 6 marks? Jian Wushuang's eyes narrowed slightly, His black robe screamed. The successor of the patrol team also noticed that something was wrong, even when they came around. The nine-fingered emperor smiled coldly. It does not seem to be a person in the Void universe. Do you volunteer your head, or let me unscrew it? The skull is here. You can take it down, and take it straight. Jian Wushuang said indifferently. Bold. The nine-fingered emperor burst into a drink, and the supreme virginity followed. Jian Wushou moved lightly and pushed away with one palm. The seemingly bland hand is the virtual force howling that directly shattered. The nine-fingered emperor's eyes were fixed. This guy who looked at only 2 marks at most could break his own power by waving his hand. With this in mind, the nine-fingered emperor no longer entrusted himself, and an emperor's sword containing a mighty power appeared in his hands out of thin air, and then strove to cut it down. Contains the full blow of 6 marks, and where the swordsman passes, it breaks the starry sky. Carved insect tricks. Jian Wushuang disdain sneered, and then rolled away with 1 finger. The supreme vigor arrived at Jian Meng. The unstoppable Jian Meng turned from brilliance to dim and disappeared instantly. Jian Wushuang's one-pointed momentum continued unabated. Through the protection of virtual force, he pressed directly on the right shoulder of the nine-finger emperor holding the sword. Invisible energy burst out through the body, tearing his entire right arm with him. Holding the emperor's sword's right arm, he fell into the starless sky and was torn by the howling wind. With just 1 blow of power, he easily wiped out the 6-marked virtual honor, which made the 3 4-marked virtual honors originally intended to sneak attack, and stayed away from the battle circle without any trace. The nine-fingered emperor, with a broken arm, looked at Jian Wushuang incredibly. How could a cricket ant destroy a giant elephant? Taking on the important things. www.novel. Jian Wushuang's speed, the palm of your hand is raised like a god's judgment. At that moment, supreme divine power turned into a huge palm print and took a picture of it towards the nine-fingered emperor. The horror between life and death made the nine-fingered emperor extremely cold. He even had no time to turn around and was crushed into the meat by the giant palm print. The great emperor of a kingdom of God died in the hands of Jian Wushuang, killing the 6-mark void in a half-step invincible state of supremacy. I am afraid that it has transcended all the cognitions of the 2 universes. With a thump, the 3 4-marked virtual honors knelt neatly in front of Jian Wushuang. Adhering to the principle of sending Buddha to the West, after raising his hand to kill, Jian Wushuang strides into this virtual universe. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 45, 95. In total, there were 17 virtual honors in the 23rd Crack Patrol. In addition to the most powerful nine-finger emperor, 7 5-mark virtual honors were hidden in the depths. In order to prevent the news that he entered the virtual universe from revealing too quickly, Jian Wushuang simply blocked the entire area with magical powers and killed the remaining virtual respects one by one. After doing all this quickly, Jian Wushuang's figure turned into a streamer, and he swept away toward the path that he once remembered. There are hundreds of millions of star fields in the virtual universe, and the larger star field holy places are already in a wartime state, and they send trace-level virtual respects to the divine universe every last time. To this end, the Holocaust was already in its possession. Because of that empty luck, my entire divine power universe has fallen. Jian Wushuang reflected a large area of stars in his star-like eyes. How do you eat it? I will let you repay it. In a starry and solitary star field, the young swordsman dressed in swordsman stopped here. In just 10,000 years, this place sealed with the Lord of the Taoist Palace was desolate and desolate until it was destroyed. The 99 divine restraints have long since been in vain, and any 4-marked virtual lord can be broken by force. The more so, the more panicked Jian Wushuang was. He didn't want to believe that the Supreme Master would die, and even if he urged the divine power to enter the land of God. The 99 divine bands automatically dissipated, opening a way for the sword unparalleled. One step into the land of the gods, the sword unparalleled. I saw that the original mounds were dying, and the ruined ruins disappeared, and replaced by the living green lotus that has spread to the sky. Every inch of land was full of Qinglian, swaying in the wind. Qinglian, who was so full of eyes, had nothing else. Brother Daoyan. Jian Wushuang walked longitudinally. His voice sounded throughout the world. Qinglian contains the charm and is transformed by Tao, Yen Supreme. Jian Wushuang did not know if Dao Yen Supreme had fallen, but could only follow his breath to find his whereabouts. For 15 days, he tirelessly searched Daiqiu and Dao, but found no trace. Is brother Daoyan really dead? A glance of gloom glanced from his eyes. Master Wushuang, don't come to Wui. Like the spring breeze and summer cicada, the pleasant warm sound could not be heard. Jian Wushuang hid a spirit and hurriedly looked behind him. I saw in the thousands of green lotuses, Daoyan, who hit the blue shirt, looked at him with a smile. Brother Daoyan. Jian Wushuang leapt up and ran to Daoyan in excitement. At this moment, Daoyan had recovered slightly from the last time he met, and his withered face began to recover a little more clear. Wushuang, why should you come here in danger? Daoyan said, I feel that the breath left by that existence is already very weak. Has our universe won? Jian Wushuang's eyes dimmed, and everything that happened after that was told to Tao Yen. Zhou, God, his whereabouts are still unknown. Jian Wushuang said here, no matter how difficult it is. Dao Yen shook his figure, looked at the eternally dim sky, and cried, Tian Tao, how can Tian Tao be so? As long as I'm still alive, I will surely slaughter all the evil enemies. Jian Wushuang hated, change my life. I, Dao Yen, sworn to protect the magical universe. Dao Yen wept, but now am back to my original state, unable to return to heaven. Jian Wushuang stepped forward and said, Brother, no matter what, now you leave here with me, I will take you to a great land of good fortune, and I will certainly be able to return to the peak when I realized that for more than 10 years. Hope rose in Dao Yan's eyes, and then fainted again. Stupid master, I can't leave anymore. Once I leave, the breath left by the virtual will inevitably furiously fight back, and am afraid that even you can't leave. Jian Wushuang heard the words and said firmly, Brother, I am not the same as me before, as long as it is not his deity. Even if the semi-ancestors come, I will be able to protect Brother Wuyo. After the words were finished, without waiting for Dao Yen to speak, Jian Wushuang waved his hand directly with his divine power to pick up the natal Qinglian under Dao Yen. Suddenly, the entire land of the gods collapsed. Countless green lotuses shrank as the river and the sea fell, and the diffused spiritual power belonged to the origin of the green lotus. At the same time, a majestic sound resounded from ancient times as if through a flood. Dao Yen, why do you want to step out of the ban? Don't you really fear that the spirits will die out? The sky is collapsing, endless imaginary forces falling, and the black flame is so thick that it condenses like a substance covering the sky, and a chaotic giant face looks at the earth. As the sun of the sun shines on the ground, the trueness of the sword unparalleled, this giant face is the true shadow of the virtual universe. Dao Yen gave a cold hum and didn't look at him. Instead, he passed on the voice sword Wushuang. Master Wushuang, I will fight with him with my soul. Later, you can quickly escape and save the fire for my magical universe. Hearing the words, Jian Wushuang shook his head gently and said, Brother Dao Yen, I have told you now that I am not what I was before. Even if his true shadow comes, I have no fear at all. When the words were over, the majestic and mighty divine power suddenly surged, like the rising wind hitting the sky. The two very different forces fought together, creating the most magnificent Huamang. The divine power belonging to the sword, unparalleled, under the pressure of that virtual force, can even be equal to it, and there is a faint upward trend. Huh, the giant face asked in wonder above the sky. These ants can exude such a breath. No wonder you dare to get out of the thunder pool. That being the case, then you all stay here today. Hong Zhong de Lu's giant voice fell, and the endless imagination suddenly condensed into a large palm covering the sky, and he was deeply suppressed. The sword Wushuang was not afraid, and with a cold hum, his palms exuded the bright red gold gods. Ancestral art the gate of power world. The majestic Tianmen breaks through the darkness and power, is located on the sky, and emits endless magnificence. The treasure light flows, the giant sun shines, and one side of the giant finger emerges from the heavenly gate with the magnificent divine power, right on that big palm. Boom! The two collided with each other, and the most extreme destructive force erupted in the extremely dark virtual force and the magnificent might. The colorful impact ripples directly destroyed the broken sky. The earth burst out into the gully, and the turbid gas of the abyss spewed out. At the moment of the collision, Jian Wu's ears, nose were all bleeding. The upper bodice black robe was torn directly, and the whole body was dimmed, covering the palm of the sky. It was in a stalemate with the giant fingers of the heavenly gate, and the divine power and imaginary power completely shattered the land of God. The giant face that appeared above the sky was no longer expressionless, and under the finger of the door that day, he faded just as quickly. Although he is the true shadow of the virtual God, at this moment, this is the home of Jian Wushuang. Chapter 4596. The endless magnificence rises, and the face is furious. How dare you? Jian Wushuang did not speak. His eyes flashed with golden mansions. I used to desperately exhaust my body just to escape your palm. Now I can resist you with just one style. What can you do to me? Huang Huang's mighty power emerged from the heavenly gate, dissipating the dark, endless power. Even if this seed is just a true shadow, it will naturally wipe out Seoul and others. When the sky suddenly collapsed, the giant face opened his mouth and swallowed the gate with one finger, and then ran towards the earth. The power heaven gate was dim for an instant. An ant's potential can beat the world. Jian Wushuang mouth changed blood. The whole body of God pattern began to escape. A gentle divine power drew around Jian Wushuang's waist and pulled him to Dao Yen Supreme. Master Wushuang, I am very grateful to you that you can come and save me back, and all these causes and effects will finally come to me. Dao Yen smiled, and then the pure divine power in his hand pushed Jian Wushuang far away. Later, Tao Yen Supreme transformed himself into a green lotus, and the vast blue rime rushed into Xiaoyu. Jian Wu's eyes were split. Brother Dao Yen, countless tragedies are ultimately caused by insufficient strength. Right now, this tragedy is going to happen again. The original faint gold pattern suddenly shattered, turning into a scared dragon to practice the sky, centered on the sword Wushuang. The Huang power pierced Xiaoyu and injected directly into the heavenly gate of the power realm. The magnificent red brilliance shines like 100 rounds of big sun. That is still just a faint outline of the gate of the sky, which is used by the sword Wushuang at no cost. Huang Wei, who has penetrated all things, has already surpassed the coercion of the previous giant fingers. Nearly 1,000 handles of magic soldiers emerged from the illusion, linked to each other, showing the tendency to cover the seal and lowered endless power. The giant virtual face that almost fell to the ground stopped abruptly, and it was even harder to get half an inch. The virtual images of the magical soldiers are intertwined with each other, as if a divine punishment is coming. The false giant face finally stopped before Dao Yan's life, and then began to appear dense cracks. 2 rounds of star-like pupils looked at Jian Wushuang, and after breaking the last sentence, they broke apart. We will meet again. Everything is back to earth, and the true shadow of the virtual is broken. The heavenly gate that hovered over the broken Xiaoyu slowly dissipated, and Jian Wushuang, like a dying swimming fish, sat on the ground kneeling, breathing heavily. Qing Yun converged, and Dao Yan, who had hit the blue shirt, held up his sword unparalleled. Master Wushuang, Dao Yan is here to thank you. Dao Yan supremely arched. The gentle divine power nourishes Jian Wushuang's dried-up meridians and makes him recover quickly. Brother Dao Yan, Jian Wushuang stood upright, solemnly. Don't thank me. This is what I should and must do. Even if I die, I will save you. Dao Yan no longer spoke, nodding with red eyes. In this battle with the true of shadow, the land of the gods was completely destroyed, and even the entire star field was cracked and collapsed, and hundreds of chaos ages were difficult to repair. Because the movement is too big, there are already trace-level virtual men starting to rush here. After Jian Wushuang waved and set up an enchantment, he and Dao Yan left the place in a cosmic boat. His next destination is the refining of the sect of sect, the Chaos Han Supreme, who is dormant for tens of thousands of times, is also a mountain mover in the divine universe. After traveling through the various star fields for more than a few months, they finally stopped in a very familiar star field. That's the realm of refining Shenzong. Retransfiguration, Jian Wushuang, and Dao Yan went straight to refining Shenzong. Although today's Jian Wushuang is a half-step invincible supreme, a supernatural power can already easily kill the invincible supreme. It is the easiest thing to hide the breath. Although Dao Yan cannot convert divine power into virtual power, but her charm has already reached its peak. It is naturally not difficult to avoid being discovered by ordinary virtual respect. A gust of wind fell into the Lian Shenzong, awakened the 2 disciples at the door, muttered a few words to each other, and fell asleep again. In a bright hall that is different from the eerie alchemy, Elder Banshan has been sitting in the middle of the hall for more than tens of thousands of years. From the departure of Jianshuang's sword, he has been enlightened to this day. The incense burner trembled, and the Elder Banshan, who had been silent for tens of thousands of years, slowly opened his eyes. In his heart, an inexplicable induction rose. The temple door, which had not been open for a long time, was gently pushed open. A ranger's figure appeared in his eyes. Behind that ranger, a rueful blue shirt followed. The young ranger slowly pulled down his hood and said with a smile, "Moving the elders, I can go home." Like a thunder strike, all sounds went away in the ears of the elders who moved the mountain. At this moment, he had only one figure in his eyes that he hadn't seen before. "Little guy, it's been a long time." Qing Yan's face showed a smile of vicissitudes. Tao Yan's eyes were reddish. "The lord of the palace, the lord of the palace." The elder who moved the mountain got up and went straight to Dao Yan, and then kneeled heavily, crying in sorrow. The past is turbulent. The old man reappears, down to the trafficker, and to the supreme of the gods. I am afraid that it is difficult to resist the past misery. These 2 old friends, who have been dating for a long time, would never have thought that they would be so poor in this life that they would meet again. When they first met, the 2 heroes were dark-haired and proud of the immortality of the divine universe. It's been a long time since I met again after suffering. With the emotion of Jian Wushuang in his heart, he withdrew from the hall and let the 2 recount the past. "Master of Dayan Palace, you are suffering." Elder Qianshan wiped his eyes, and wept silently. Daoyan wiped her tears. 100 million years apart. I didn't expect that we could see each other again. I only hope that we won't be separated again this time. Besides death, in this life, I will not be half a step away from the palace master. Daoyan no longer spoke, but clenched his palm firmly. The two old friends said nothing at all. Sun-moving star, obliquely the door of the temple was slowly opened, and the mountain mover kneeled down on one knee and solemnly said, "The mountain mover sees the master of the Wushuang Palace. From now on, let the master of the Wushuang Palace dispatch. Never die." Jian Wushuang hurriedly lifted the mountain mover. "Let's leave here first and wait to return to the divine universe before we make a plan." Dao Yan and the Taoist promised to leave the refining Shenzong with Jian Wushuang. Almost endless years spent in this virtual universe, as if the years of the cage had finally broken, even if they died in the battlefield outside the territory. It is also the best destination. Jian Wushuang sat on the railing of the cosmic boat and looked at it with extreme eyes. Tao Yen Supreme and Mountaineer Taoist stood on the deck and finally closed the star field of this virtual universe to his eyes. In at least a year, the spacecraft can leave the virtual universe, and Jian Wushuang will take advantage of the time when the virtual is sealed to conduct a comprehensive counterattack. Diaphragm, what kind of existence does this group of guys have? Jian Wushuang secretly meditated. Chapter 45, 97. Sun Shun has been sealed for more than 10,000 years, and there is no breath of advent at all. Taking advantage of this time, there are Daoyan Supremes who have gone through the last cataclysmic battle, together with the Starry Sword Sect, and the invincible Supremes of the Dragon and Phoenix Unicorns should be able to barely hold the number of the 6 marked voids in the universe. Jian Wushuang is confident that although he cannot kill the zombie, he should have no problem holding it. In this way, the high-end battlefield is flat. The ordinary battlefield is also the home of the magical universe, and the hard drag can also drag the ordinary vanity of the virtual universe to death. As long as the living force of the virtual universe is slaughtered as much as possible, and even if the virtual returns again, it will be an extremely long time to launch the next catastrophe. In the calculation of Jian Wushuang, only the extremely mysterious phagocytosis is a great variable. He had personally experienced the horror of the phagocytosis, and if it was not for Gava's shot, he would have feared that he had fallen into the hands of the phagocytosis. What kind of organization, and what purpose do they have? Are their needs consistent with what the virtual universe needs? Jian Wushuang felt more and more headaches the more he thought about it. Wushuang Gongzhu, is there anything upset? Can you say one or two with Dao Yan? Dao Yan Supreme asked. Jian Wushuang groaned for a moment, then jumped up to the deck and asked, "Elder Dao Yan, do you know that there is an existence in this virtual universe called the phagocytosis?" Dao Yan's eyes were fixed. Did this attack on the catastrophe? Jian Wushuang nodded and said, "It has already been shot, and judging from the shot, I am afraid that the strength is not weaker than the half-ancestor." Half-ancestor, have they grown to such a point? Dao Yan was bitter in his eyes. "I knew the organization before the last catastrophe. In fact, in the first place, the phagocytosis first appeared in our divine universe. At that time, I had an argument with the emperor phasing organized by them." Recalling the memories from a long time ago, Dao Yan said slowly, "However, the discourse ended in disappointment. After that, they left the divine universe and became the divine universe from then on." Nightmare. Does that Elder Yan know what they really need? Is it really the luck of our magical universe? Jian Wushuang asked urgently. Dao Yan shook his head supremely and then said, "He and his phagocytic organization seem to be a very contradictory existence. In that doctrine, the emperor promised to help our divine universe retreat from the enemy, But he did not ask for any favorable conditions. There is only one requirement, which is to completely kill the virtual universe without leaving a soul. I didn't agree with his request. Even if the virtual universe invades first, but to kill every soul, I can't ask myself. He left the divine universe and joined the virtual universe. If why he and his phagocytosis helped the virtual universe, I am afraid that it is because the virtual has agreed to his request. Jian Wushuang heard the words and shuddered. The bite-eating emperor of the organization was like a special existence independent of the two universes, and their purpose was never to compete for luck. Instead, the universe to be defeated is completely reduced to a dead domain, leaving no living beings. The two universes seem to have become playthings in his hands until the dead. Silent for a long while, Jian Wushuang suddenly said, "Elder Tao Yin, if that is the case, I should make a deal with them for the magical universe." "You want to—" Tao Yin didn't go on, and frowned. "Master of the Wushuang Palace, aren't all the eternal universe of the poor? All creatures are just pieces of chess." Jian Wushuang shook his head and said for a while, "One day I will find Master and ask the last question." Only the cosmic boat shuttled in the bleak ancient star field. Half a year later, because the land is a bustling starry country, it is no longer possible to use the cosmic boat to shuttle with great fanfare. Jian Wushuang and Dao Yin, the three men who moved the mountain and dressed as a ranger to save unnecessary trouble. But Rao is so, the journey is also extremely dangerous, just killing the vanity under the sword without hands, no less than 20. At most, there is more than March. We can leave here and reach the divine universe. Jian Wushuang said after replenishing from one of the star domain virtual kingdoms. Although Daoyan Supreme and the Taoist looked pale, their irresistible excitement in their eyes exposed their hearts. Too long to leave home, so long that most of the kingdom of God has become dust, not to mention they have fetters. In order to avoid too much unnecessary trouble, the three rangers try to make a roundabout journey from the lonely starfield. Perhaps the opening of the 23rd crack opened the vigilance of the virtual universe, and the vanity that was rarely seen in the world also appeared in various star fields. On the countdown to leaving the virtual universe, on the sky of a more prosperous starfield virtual kingdom, Jian Wushuang noticed a faint yet familiar atmosphere. That breath is the divine power that belongs only to the divine universe. Daoyan Supreme and the Taoist also noticed that divine power, and then looked at Jian Wushuang. In view of the fact that the two sides of the universe are still in a hot war, Jian Wushuang thought for a moment, then decided to let the two hide in the virtual state below him, and went to investigate the situation alone. After saying a word of caution to each other, the swordless twins swept across the starry sky. I saw that in the endless starry sky, 4 or 5 spaceships of the imaginary universe broke through, and that faint divine power came from the first ship. The mind turned, and the sword was shaped like a rainbow, and he boarded the deck of the first spacecraft in one breath. "Who?" whispered. A 4-marked Su Zun stepped out from the bottom of the cabin, looking at Jian Wushuang with vigilance. "The road is far away, and I want to ask an adult to give a bowl of water to drink." Jian Wushuang said, while he was walking in front of one foot. He grabbed it in the air. Immediately, the 4-marked virtual respect fell to the ground and fell to his knees, unable to speak, his face in pain. "Tell me, are you catching people from the divine universe?" Jian Wushuang frowned coldly. The horror between life and death made this 4-marked virtual respect speak like a pea without any concealment. "Yes, I caught one, but that was a virgin who didn't have much strength." My grown-up looked at her raw lips and teeth and was ready to take a blow. The words did not fall. Jian Wushuang directly crushed him into meat, and the spirits were destroyed. Immediately, he stepped back a few steps and looked coldly down the deck, a force that was more pure and overbearing than the invincible Supreme escaped. "How dare you dare to come here, wantonly?" Ba Ju's majestic imagination tore the entire deck, causing purple and blue gods to thunder. Chapter 45, 98. An old man with a height of several feet and a naked upper body appeared in Jian Wushuang's eyes. Jian Wushuang's pupils were frozen, his white hair was burly, and he had 2 thunderballs in his left hand. It is the old man who has been seen in the refining god sect and in the battlefields outside the region. He is an ambassador for the virtual god, and he has a virtual force to reach the peak, and he is no different from the white ancestor of the hegemon. If it was the previous sword Wushuang, how far has it been to meet him? But now there is no fear. Breathing a sigh of sigh, Jian Wushuang stretched down his hood, revealing a cheek that could not be more familiar with righteousness. Sure enough, he fixed his gaze and questioned, "It's you, Wushuang, isn't it, swordsman? Aren't you running away? How dare you come here alone?" "I'm here to collect the debt." Jian Wushuang coldly, Blood debt! Blood debt!" The Shushan made a sigh of right, and then smiled. "Only you, the scumbags? I originally wanted to take your head and give it to Lord Shushan as a night pot. I never thought you would die. This province is also hard to find." Ignoring the insults of the righteous ambassador, he reached out his hand and pulled out the tailored sword hanging from his waist. Su Shun right flashed his eyes. Very good. Just by the way, I cut your head with this magic sword, without delay." 10 breaths. Jian Wushuang said coldly. Su Shenyu fixed his gaze, and the monstrous imagination blocked all escape paths in an instant. At the same time, the right fist smashed out, and the fist of the extinguishable star was smashed into the sword without double-sided doors. In a star-cutting style, a more powerful Jianmeng slammed into the fist boxer, which easily offset his offensive. Su Shun right fixed his gaze. This character, who was almost equal to the ants in his eyes, actually lightly resolved his offensive. Anxious in his heart, he directly threw the 2 huge thunder in his left hand towards Jian Wushuang. The thunderball rose against the storm, and there was a huge amount of lightning on it. Once it was hit by anyone, even if it was invincible, it had to fall on the spot. Without evasion, Jian Wushuang stood upright like that. Only the Taro Excalibur in his hand was leading forward. 2 thunderballs, and thunder came, but they were still at the moment when they hit the sword tip of Tai Luo's Excalibur. Then the sword stabbed without a double arm, and the 2 thunderballs came back in the same way, and the potential was even heavier. Su Shun right fixed his gaze, subconsciously reached out to catch it, and the blood mist burst from his palm. With a moan, he spread his palms and saw that between the thunder bones, the 2 thunderballs had no idea when they broke into dregs. Since the first battle of the Holocaust, he has long forgotten what it is like to be injured. Now, not only his palms are broken, but also 2 thunderballs, which are regarded as his own life, are also damaged, and the shame make this false, make an instant violent. Sword unparalleled. This seat wants you to die, without a burial place. The fierce imagination centered on the ambassador of the imaginary god, and swept across the entire star domain in an instant. Countless stars broke apart. Even the kingdom underneath was under his power, and instantly nirvana. Incompetent fury. Jian Wushuang raised an eyebrow and smiled, and the Tai Luo divine sword returned to the sheath. So he rushed directly against the violent force. Su Yu, the height of Zhang Yu, made a punch with a punch in front of him, and at the same time opened his mouth to spit out a virtual inflammation, which destroyed the space easily. The black robe surging, Jian Wushuang's fancy palm forward, broke through the thick black flame directly and struck the black fist. A fist the size of a water tank smashed into the palm without any suspense. The imaginary meat emulsion did not appear, and the proud smile even hung on the face of Shushin Yusher. The ghost-like figure quietly appeared in front of him, and a red-gold pattern flashed at the same time. With a soft swipe, a huge head naturally shifted. Jian Wushuang held the white hair in one hand and lifted the entire head into the hand with Shushin right. Boom. The headless body shuddered and then slammed into the bilge. My body, what about the body? Su Shenyu exclaimed, terrified. He wanted to escape, but found that he had only such a head. With that big head in front of himself, Jian Wushuang said quietly, now still want to use my head as a night pot. No, don't want to. The extreme horror of death at any time made the immortal false in front of you, completely scared. Sword Wushuang, Master Wushuang, you can let me go. I promise not to investigate everything that happened today, and I will certainly intercede for you in the presence of Lord Shushin when the magical universe will leave you alone. There was a flash of disgust in his eyes, and Jian Wushuang threw his head directly into the star field. Without waiting for him to be ecstatic, a beam of Shenmong came and killed him. The virtual made the right move, so he disappeared. Walking towards the bilge, he saw a very familiar figure in a huge cage. The light-skinned clothes of this white shirt were extremely filthy at the moment, and the bun that had been turned into a playful look was scattered to cover most of the cheeks. Jian Wushuang Strong endured a heart that was about to explode, and he removed the cage mouth in one shot. Little boy. Sword squatting softly. After several calls, the startled, numb little figure looked up timidly, and a pair of deer-like eyes looked at Jian Wushuang. After a while, tears poured, and a sorrowful cry rang from the young boy's childish mouth. It's you, smelly chest basket. The whimper sounded, and the childish fluttered into Jian Wushuang's arms and wept. Sorrow rushed to his heart. This worrisome little boy who seemed to gather the spiritual power of heaven and earth as a whole. At this moment's miserable situation, he thought of the ancestor Feng Tian, who saved the fire of God's universe with his body. His eyes were red, and Jian Wushuang murmured, I'm late. Smelly chest basket, where is my master? Please tell me my master. I want my master to take revenge on me and kill the bad guys who bully me. The naive in her arms let out all the terror and pain in her heart. Since she was a child, she has been serving beside her ancestor Feng Tian. She is not the only person in the world. Jian Wushuang is the only person she has talked to after her ancestor, and naturally regards her as the closest person. Smelly chest basket. The young child stood up and looked at Jian Wushuang with a pair of red eyes, sobbing intermittently. You tell me where my master has gone, and I want to miss him very much. Should he not be childish? If he is too naive, he won't hit him. He is scared and doesn't want to leave him for a long time. The cramps in her heart made Jian Wushuang unable to open her, to tell her the truth. He can only say sadly, childish, rest assured, with me from now on, no one will bully you. Chapter 45, 99, Smelly chest basket. I just want to hear the truth. A large teardrop slid down the naive cheek. My master, is he alive or dead? Taking a deep breath, Jian Wushuang no longer looked at the naive, and trembled, dead. Immature childishly, his eyes quickly faded, his body flickered a little, and he planted himself in Jian Wushuang's arms and passed out. Looking at this once carefree little fairy boy, now he looks like this. Sadness recedes from his eyes, and he goes to the starry sky. Sword Wushuang lifted his naivety, slowly rising to the starry sky. The remaining 4 spacecraft, a total of 30 vain honors, surrounded them in a trend of encirclement. Master of Wushuang Palace, hurry up. Dao Yen and the movers of Taoism swept through the statures, looking at the more than 30 vanity eyes. If it is in the divine universe, these vanities do not even have 5 marks. You can just wave the mountain and kill them. But now in the virtual universe, the Taoist can use up to 6 or 7 layers of magical powers. And the Taoist Supreme has already been weak, and he has no time to replenish his divine power. Even the Destiny Qinglian will suffer irreversible damage. Confronting these 30 virtual honors, there is no chance of winning. However, Jian Wushuang did not show any sign of leaving, and the golden gods in his eyes surged against the wind. Just repay it with your messy blood. The voice without any emotional color, just like God's punishment came to the world. Only one sentence, and they ended their ending. This more prosperous star field quietly formed a layer of misty frost, and all the countless creatures under a trace of vanity have unknowingly become an ice sculpture. The 30 vain princes in this cold age felt strange changes at the same time. What's going on? I feel my bone marrow is freezing, and the weak forces are condensing. I said, right? The adults died in the kid's hands. How could we kill him with many people? Run away. After the noisy whispers, the 30 virtual princes were scattered as birds and beasts and turned into black light and scattered in various directions. Then each vanity failed to escape, and the moment they turned into an ice sculpture. The 4 seasons in the Terra Sword canon is no longer the same today. With a half-step invincible supremacy, you can kill all realms, let alone this group of virtual lords who are at most not more than 4 marks. Instantly, the frozen country of the star domain was so understatement that Jian Wushuang was like the of gods in charge of punishment. These star domains and vanity that were stained with innocent blood were frozen, feeling the coolness coming from the whole body. The man moving the mountain could not help but tighten his tight shirt. He began to discover that Jian Wushuang's unwitting growth had surpassed his cognition. Dao Yen Supreme was not looking at those frozen esteemed princes, stepped forward and looked at the thin figure in Jian Wushuang's arms, unable to bear the pain in his heart. Is this the young girl under Feng Tianzuo? Tao Yen asked with a tremor. Swordless eyes sink like water, and nodded. The son of the deceased has suffered so much. You really deserve to die in the virtual universe. Dao Yen wept, her face tingling with anger because of her anger. I really want to crush them one by one now. The man on the mountain road looked iron blue and punched several ice sculptures with ice on his side. In the end, the void universe owes us, and it must be repaid with blood. Jian Wushuang said in a deep voice, and the last trace of pity in his heart was quickly disappearing. In the next period of time, the emergence of a powerful young ranger wearing a large black robe scared more than half of the star universe of the virtual universe. That nightmare figure appeared in one of the star fields, but in half a day, the entire star field vanished as many nirvana disappeared, down to the trafficker's death. And up to 6 marks of virtual respect, no one soul survived. A vast force of imagination, as if through the sky, even the strong ancestors of the 6 ancestors in their respective worlds, it is difficult to escape the end of the dead. No one side knows what the mysterious ranger looks like, because anyone who has seen that person has long disappeared with the stars. There was a rumor that the mysterious ranger was sent by the divine universe to revenge, but it was quickly rejected, and there was a sacred rumor that the man was an apostle under the virtual seat and broke through the extreme situation and lost his mind, and then began mass slaughter. When a 5-party star field is fully prepared, please call on each of the ancestors to launch a sack attack, but after the failure, the entire universe of the extreme north is silent. A total of 5 ancestors who were at the top of the 6-marked impoverished state, plus 110 venerated deities, disappeared strangely overnight. The 5 bustling star fields are like wiping away from under the stars, leaving only the black void. No one knows what happened that night. They can only silently pray for the person who exists like a nightmare and leave soon. In a lonely starfield, a cosmic boat containing only 5 people, like Jinghong, jumped forward at a very fast speed. Jian Wushuang sat on the railing of the bow of the ship, and Changfeng slammed the hunting of the black robe on his body, inadvertently showing the spirit of killing, making him walk out of the blood of the dead mountain. In January, in the 27 star fields, kill 8 of the 6 marks and 23 of the 5 marks. The rest of the realm is uncountable. One after another, the ordinary numbers emerged from his mind and soon disappeared. Today's sword is unparalleled, and the destructiveness of him alone is extremely terrible. He can destroy a virtual country's starfield with a wave of his hand, and even the 6-mark virtual respect can only walk through a few patterns under his hand. If it wasn't about to leave the virtual universe, Jian Wushuang would naturally kill the living forces of each star field all the way. At the same time, he was also a bit strange. The virtual universe seemed a little quiet. WWW, novel, except for the prosperous star domain, sending virtual respect to the extraterrestrial battlefield. There was no movement. The zombie goddess of that virtual universe must be able to easily sense the breath of Jian Wushuang. And even the phages parasitic in the virtual universe have no response. Is it really because it's too low-key? The naive, who had changed into a white shirt, awakened from his sleep, and after whispering, rushed to the rear of Jian Wushuang, holding the sword's corner tightly with his hand. For today's naivety, Jian Wushuang regrets it more. Seeing the naivety like a bow-struck bird, he seems to see the ancestor Feng Tian, who is weird in temperament and has a mind-bound universe. Jian Wushuang jumped off the railing, urging divine power to appease the naive. Like the naive of a frightened bird, it slowly calmed down, but he couldn't let go of his hands. The 27 star domains, plus the culprit, the imaginary righteousness, all paid for this little boy. Chapter 4600. After learning that Feng Tian's ancestor died, the young child sat for 7 days in a row, as if the soul had been taken away, without any belief or dependence. Even the Taoist Supreme could not persuade the slightest. In the end, it was Jian Wushuang who said something to her, and then she woke up from a dead seat. When he first came out of the fairy land, he realized the extreme evil of the universe, which is fatal to the purest and immature naive. The only thing that Jian Wushuang can do now is to troubleshoot. We have at least 1 day left before we can reach the crack, Jian Wushuang said. It's just that the cracks that want to come to the crack should be tighter. Those guys are already waiting for us there. Even if it was the 20 Liuxuan Shuzuan sitting in the cracks, Jian Wushuang also confidently defended Daoyan and the Taoists to the divine universe. But eating the tissue and the zombie is his heart trouble. Without a perfect strategy, Jian Wushuang will never let them break free. He'll go through the barriers first. You wait in the nearby star field. If I'm fine, he'll pick you up. If I can't come back within 7 days, you elder Dao Yin dormant and wait until the crack is weak, then break out. Wushuang said. Dao Yin just wanted to speak, and Dao Yin reached out and stopped him, then said, everything is heard by the master of the Wushuang Palace. Even if we go together, we also add trouble to the master of the Wushuang Palace. Jian Wushuang nodded his head. When he was about to leave, the naive pulled his horns again and said timidly, do not leave me with a smelly chess basket. Jian Wushuang rubbed the naive bun with his hand. Wait for 2 days, and I will come back to pick you up at most. The chubby gritted his teeth, and then let go of his palm. Jian Wushuang's heart was sour, and after taking an oath, he rushed into the crack. 1 year may be a long time for ordinary creatures, but for monks, it is almost just a blink of an eye. What sword warriors gambled was that the zombies did not strengthen their arrangement and went to the 23 cracks again. As soon as he stepped into the encirclement of the crack, a thick death gas rushed towards him. He hesitated for a moment. And those vanity corpses that were easily killed were still scattered in the void, and their positions had not changed. In addition, there is no living breath. Hasn't it been deployed this year? And no one knows what happened here. Jian Wushuang couldn't believe it. The situation here has not been found on duty in a year. According to the treacherous nature of the zombie god, it is impossible not to guard here. Are they not in the virtual universe? With this in mind, Jian Wushuang was so pleased that he was preparing to test his advance. A violent breath burst out of the crack. Jian Wushuang was startled and immediately released his divine power to wait. The next moment, the crack enchantment was suddenly opened, and a figure suddenly jumped into the virtual universe. Jian Wushuang's pupils froze suddenly. Zombie! At this moment, the zombie god, his black robe was shattered, and the exposed skin scales were like being peeled alive by giant force, exposing the dark gray flesh. The 9 heads of the zombie symbol are only 2 at the moment, and the broken neck cavity has just healed the blood. It seems that the zombie who may die at any time, after seeing Jian Wushuang's figure in front of him, could not help but tremble, and the 2 pairs of vertical pupils were also darkened. It's you, Jian Wushuang? Jian Wushuang didn't open his mouth, and his breath reaching the pinnacle already showed his attitude. Feeling his rising horror, the zombie resisted the uneasiness in his heart and said in a deep voice, "Why are you here? Get away quickly. Otherwise this seat doesn't mind killing you in place." "Oh, it's just you now?" God's tattoos appeared on the black robe. Jian Wushuang looked at him with a sneer. "I don't mind, you can try it now." After he noticed the change in his breath, the zombie face looked as if he was dead. "How could you?" Jian Wushuang knows that when a person is ill, his life will be killed. Even if he pulls out the Taro Excalibur, he will directly release the 5th form of the Terra Sword. The huge Taro treasure is condensed in the heavens and the earth. Unlike the previous one, a big round of sun appears at the same time on the top of the Taro treasure. Looking at the sword that came out of the sky, the zombie that was almost exhausted and could not hold it anymore, he growled, "Sword unparalleled, you can't kill me. Once I die, all the secrets will disappear, including the news of your master Xuani." Jian Wushuang trembled in his heart, and the giant Tai Luo bow deflected, almost falling with the zombie. Infinite sword rushes wantonly, directly tearing up the starry sky. The zombie fled a little later, and the entire left arm was directly crushed by the sword. Reaching for a gap, he pulled the zombie figure directly in front of him. Jian Wu's eyes sink like water. "Tell me all the secrets you know, and I will spare you." The ugly face of the zombie was twisted by the pain, making it even more ugly. A gleam of blood spilled from the corners of the mouth, and the zombie was half resentful and half jealous. "Only after 10,000 years, you have grown into a terrible place. Sword unparalleled, what kind of monster are you?" Jian Wushuang held the palm of the zombie's neck firmly. "Don't sell me. As soon as I push hard, you will die." The zombie heard the words and laughed strangely. "Kill me, and another person will replace me soon." "Can you kill all of Jian Wushuang? If you kill me now, I promise that you will even have the virtual universe next. Cannot go out." When Jian Wushuang was stunned in his heart and was about to kill him with one palm, the zombie suddenly said, "Do you know who I worship now? Even if you can resist with me in the chamber now, there are several equivalent powers. My guy is here. Can you handle it? You're looking for death." Jian Wushuang sighed and slammed his palm. The zombie's throat made a squeaking sound. "Listen to me. And now, do as I say, go to the extreme sea. I guarantee you no trouble." Jian Wushuang was about to open his mouth and began to escape outside the crack in the void. "They are here, and if you don't do what I say, you and I will die here." The zombie slowly closed his eyes and stopped speaking. Feeling that horror was getting closer and closer, Jian Wushuang gritted his teeth, dragged directly like a dead dog zombie, and swept towards the depths of the virtual universe behind him. When the two bodies completely disappeared, 23 cracked junctions were directly torn. A number of perimeters of surging, forceless body emerged. How could there be a breath of divine power here? Is the zombie dead? If you want to see alive, if you want to see a dead body, you must not let him live any longer. Observe. Chapter 46:01. In the lonely and lonely remote starfield, there is no living breath left, and a cosmic boat jumps and shuttles. On this deck, the sturdy zombies by chains of divine strength, divine power chained, breathing heavily on his back. Tao Yen Supreme and Taoist resemble the enemy. Master of Wushuang Palace, why did you bring him here? The man moving the mountain road looked anxious. It would be better for us to kill this person now, and the province has created variables. I said, little guy, we have seen each other by chance. Do you want me to die like this? The two remaining heads of the zombie are facing the mountain mover together with strange faces. The divine power was transformed into a pair of piercings, which tied his two mouths directly, and Ho Jian Wushuang smiled bitterly and told what happened to them. After listening, Dao Yen frowned and came slowly to the snake god, questioning, do you know the news of Xian Yi? Jian Wushuang waved his hand to remove the power from his mouth, and the zombie laughed. Of course I know, but I can't say now. This is my whole card. When will I be out of danger? I will say, listen. Aren't you afraid I will kill you now? Jian Wushuang said coldly. The ugly face of the zombie shook, and then smiled overcast. Of course I believe, but you kill me now. I guarantee that none of you can live safely. You can only reach a safe place if I live. If you dare play tricks, I don't mind pulling you back before dying. Rest assured, I love my own life and want be able to live with me. No one was talking, and a lingering haze was covering Jian Wushuang's heart. In order to prevent the naive from seeing the stress response of the zombie, Jian Wushuang used the divine power to make the naive go to sleep earlier. For 7 days, according to the route given by the snake god, the cosmic boat had already deviated from the normal star field. Looking into the eyes, the starry sky changed from crystal blue to extremely dark and dirty. At the same time, a dark giant sea floats in the starry sky and flows into the depths of the universe. Wow! This is a continent that grows in the dark sea, without the sun. The sky is always a chaotic color that will fall at dusk. The spacecraft was stranded on the gray dirt, and the dying zombie was hung by the sword unparalleled on the bow. Hurry, throw me into the sea. The zombie eyes stared at the dark sea with red eyes. Jian Wushuang didn't ignore him, but explored this strange continent growing on the sea with Dao Yen Supreme. Waving for a handful of black water in the giant sea, the strange energy suddenly boiled in the hands of Jian Wushuang. What kind of power is this? Jian Wushuang widened his eyes and looked at the boiling black water in the palm of his hand. Neither belonged to divine power nor virtual power. Seeing the supremacy of Dao Yen, she also felt a handful of black water. Sure enough, it's not divine or virtual. It's really weird. How can this kind of place produce another kind of energy in the two extreme universes? Jian Wushuang looked subconsciously at the head of the universe, but found that the snake did not know when it had disappeared. When his heart sank, Jian Wushuang directly released the vast divine power. Tao Yen Supreme and the Taoist saw their divine power in a flash. The weird laughter resounded from the deck of the cosmic boat, and saw the zombie, who turned into a snake awake in the lower body, and appeared in front of the crowd with a baby. The sword was unparalleled, and the blood was rushing. His eyes were red, Animal, how dare you? The zombie ignored his anger and said ruthlessly, "Release the yoke on me, or I'll let her die immediately." The naive cried out in pain, and her neck was already bruised. Forbearing his smashed corpse, Jian Wushuang said, "Yes, but you dare to hurt her for half a point. I promise you that even if you have the means to reach the sky, I will destroy you all." As soon as the zombie's erect pupil condense, the palm that had been gradually exerted gradually released. And just at the moment, the childish child suddenly took out a copper golem from his arms and smashed it in the head of the zombie. The screams sounded, and the zombie pained and let go of the naive. The sword was unparalleled, and the taro sword in his hand threw it directly. In response to the storm, the Excalibur broke through, and it was just a face-to-face meeting that cut off a head of the zombie god. As a Changhong, he swept towards the cosmic boat, and Jian Wushuang slammed his blood on the last head of the zombie again. "Don't! Kill me! Kill me! All the secrets you want to know disappear." The zombie lost his previous scene, and fear of death forced him to beg for mercy. With another punch, Jian Wushuang twisted his neck and choked him up. "Say, if you don't tell a secret that pleases me now, I will let you die. Say, I say." The zombie nodded his head and mourned, "Like the polar sea right now. It was not born out of our two universes at all, but landed from an unknown place due to an accident. Brought together." Jian Wushuang smiled coldly. "What kind of secret is this? Do you really want to die?" The zombie shook his head, and then said in a vacant look, "Do you really think that the divine universe and the virtual universe are the ultimate?" Jian Wushuang stunned. "Keep talking." "I don't know. I don't know anything. The existence of it is no longer accessible to me." The zombie regained his composure, and there were various unexplainable emotions in the vertical pupil. "What I know is only it's my guess, but you should be able to imagine the ultimate of all these things." Jian Wushuang no longer asked more. After adding dozens of bands on the zombie, he was thrown on the deck at will. After doing this, Jian Wushuang quickly walked to the innocent child hiding. "Little girl, are you okay?" With a pair of eyes flushed, the immature child shook her head vigorously and then raised the bronze symbol in her hand. "You smelled the chess basket you saved me. This is what you gave to my master. Now I will return it to you." That piece of bronze symbol is nothing else. It was the chaotic Wuding Ding that was given to Feng Tian's ancestors by Sword Wushuang in exchange for things. Feeling the familiar atmosphere from Ding, Jian Wushuang shook his head gently and stuffed Ding again. "This tripod is not very useful to stay with me. Just stay on your body for your defense." The naive heard the words and shook his head stubbornly. "No, Master said that he must hand it to you. This respect will be of great use to you in the future." After a short pause, Hina said, "I don't need the protection of this tripod. You said you would protect me." Without further comment, Jian Wushuang finally put Ding in her hands. Chapter 46:02. Even if the essence of the five spirits is gathered, Chaos Wudi Ding is not very useful to Jian Wushuang, because even now he can't understand a few points. Instead of staying with him, it's better to keep it next to the naive, just in case. Judging from the results of the Mace of the Zombie, just now, the effect of Chaos Wuding Ding is still good. To appease the naive, Jian Wushuang came to Dao Yen Supreme and said in a conscientious voice, "Elder Dao Yen, move elder. How do you think that guy just said?" In order to prevent the snake god from eavesdropping, Jian Wushuang wrapped his entire head with divine power. Dao Yen groaned a little and finally shook his head. "It's incredible. I can't imagine what kind of existence exists besides the divine universe and the void universe. In my opinion, even as the duality of things, the two sides of the universe are already the ultimate of everything." The Taoist who moved the mountain nodded and nodded, His mind was in agreement with Dao Yin because the divine universe is too vast. It encompasses almost all realms and the limits of all living beings. Even if the cosmic will begins to recover, it is just another new life of the universe. Is there another universe besides the divine universe and the void universe? Dao Yin Supreme was born at the beginning of the universe and at the beginning of chaos. His opinions will more or less affect the judgment of Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang is also willing to believe that the two universes are the ultimate of everything, but he always feels that the words of the zombie were not just mad when he went crazy. He should have glimpsed what remains of civilization in ancient times or heard, "I learned what I shouldn't listen to." Jian Wushuang looked away. The polar sea is deep, and the infinite sea is without waves, as if a mirror that is completely black has been preserved for a long time. How could this polar sea that straddles the starry sky but not melt into the virtual universe and exist independently? Reaching out to disperse the divine power on the head of the zombie, Jian Wushuang held him directly and swept towards the edge of the polar sea. Ben was dying, and a zombie who was about to fall. After he noticed that he was close to the polar sea, he immediately became restless. "Put me in! Put me in!" Jian Wushuang didn't open his mouth, but stopped at the polar coast and reached out to hang the zombie in the polar sea. "Let me go! Let me go!" The zombie struggled uneasily. He waved a handful of dark water, and that weird wave of energy breathed away again. With a little thought, Jian Wushuang poured the black water in his hand on the broken arm of the zombie. Black water seemed to be born with wisdom. Like a creeping serpent, it instantly fell into the wound, and innumerable dark granulations sprang up and built up with each other, which actually came faster than God's remodeling. Jian Wu's eyes were swift and fast, and he reached out to cut off the clustered granulation. The zombie trembled. His pupils were like a needle tip. "Sword unparalleled! It!" Without paying attention to the wrath of the zombie god, Jian Wushuang threw the zombie on the shore, and then said quietly, "Of course you want to enter this extreme sea. Open your source of life to me, and let me plan a ban." "You dream. What a nasty junior." The zombie gritted his teeth and stared at Jian Wushuang resentfully. With a cold smile, Jian Wushuang lifted his feet and kicked the zombie far away. At the same time, dozens of Huang gods transformed into prison cages of divine power, trapping him in the formation. "Don't try to break through. For you now, you can't stand the 10 breaths," Jian Wushuang reminded, and then flew straight into the endless sea. The zombie god's eyes were fixed, and his revenge glanced up suddenly, sword unparalleled. "This mantra you lost in this extreme sea, and perpetually sink, stepping into this extreme sea area. A special forbidden breath directly caused the discomfort of the divine power in Jian Wushuang. The forbidden atmosphere seemed to be chaotic and unruly, the barbarism of the original wasteland, and a mysterious suppression from the level of life, making Jian Wushuang the whole person bad. Jingshou Shintai, Jian Wushuang dispelled that weird feeling and continued to ascend above the polar sea. He had an inexplicable intuition that Feng Jihai seemed to be calling him. The dark and infinite sea surface is like a deep mirror, and even if it is Jian Wushuang occasionally looking at the sea, it is dizzy. In order to prevent the loss of direction, Jian Wushuang placed a cage of divine power on the zombie's body cloth and can feel the distance from the shore at any time. But at the moment, Jian Wushuang felt the breath of the divine power left on the shore and rushed towards himself at a very fast speed. Jian Wushuang's heart tightened, and that bad hunch finally came. A dark beam of light galloping across the strangely still polar sea, but it has not been seen clearly. A blaze of energy emerged from the sky, aiming at the sword Wushuang sinking down. Divine patterns emerged. the vast divine power turned into a light wall and appeared in front of the swordless pair. The two collided, and at the same time, the dark and vigorous ons shattered the light wall. Jian Wushuang frowned, and he found that it was the zombie who sent such a fierce blow. At this moment, the zombie had a broken arm and was born again. He had only one head left. I don't know when he gave birth to 8 more, and the black mist poured from every inch of his pores. The scarlet-red mang escaped from the 9 pairs of vertical pupils, and the glance towards Xiang Wushuang was not mixed with the slightest emotion. The prestige of the ancestral and semi-ancestor class made Jian Wushuang not dare to act lightly, although he roughly understood that he can currently fight the semi-ancestor class without losing, but that is also based on the use of ancestral techniques. This situation is a great disadvantage for Jian Wushuang. He didn't understand how the zombie came back to the top in a very short time and locked himself in. The weird zombie with a weird smile on his face and 9 mouths opened at the same time soared unparalleled. Don't restrain the most taboo existence in your heart, release it. This is a bliss world. Don't you like killing people too? There are many people you kill here. Jian Wushuang's brow was tightly frowned when he was about to release his divine power. He saw the polar sea beneath him like a mirror, and suddenly it boiled. A figure with thick, ink-like mucus appeared slowly. Jian Wushuang, you pay me back. The sound was screaming, and the ice cream snorkeler, who exuded a dark mist, came with power. Jian Wushuang's pupils calmed, and soon calmed down again, sighing coldly. Have you even moved out of the hallucinations? I can kill you once. Why not kill you a second time? With Bingyu Supreme taking the lead in slaying, the figures that had died in the hands of the sword without hands appeared one by one. You were a messy person during your lifetime. Shouldn't it be a messy person after death? Chapter 46:03. The monstrous warfare rushed into the sky. Countless red gold patterns appeared on the whole body, and the sword power transformed by the divine power was like a rushing river, which directly smashed the imagination, such as the Ice Morning Supreme, into pieces. The world is crying. The strange sounds go straight to Jiuxiao, and everything has gone like a magic barrier. Waving his hand to dispel the black smoke in front of his eyes, Jian Wushuang snorted coldly, sculpture of carving insects. The zombie standing in the distance laughed strangely, sword unparalleled. I will never let you live in this world. Sink in my imagination. The words fell, and a giant zombie who wanted to stand with the sky came out, and the 9 snake heads that almost broke the sky seemed like the 9 rounds. Jian Wushuang was also unwilling to show weakness. He turned his fists into palms and punched out the divine pattern, directly condensing a glorious heavenly gate above the dark sky. Shocks reached the world, and even the calm polar sea shook waves. The next moment, the 9 sunbursts easily tore the sky, carrying endless momentum, and slammed into the sword Wushuang. The magnificent Tianmen hole opened, and one of the giant fingers of the sky also fell heavily. Unlike the previous one, this finger is out, and another giant finger is coming. The first head of the snake hit the sky giant finger, enough to crush the aftermath of any star country burst, completely burst. As the polar sea of the water mirror is completely overturned, the huge waves of the sky, and the sky will swallow up the broken sky. Jian was body shape plummeted, and the ears and noses were full of blood. One finger twisted a snake head and one snake head, and 2 incompatible vast forces were completely crushed together. The sky is instantly broken, all the stars are lost, and the cracks in the sky stretch for millions of miles. Polar sea, shore. Sitting in the cosmic boat, Dao Yen and Dao Shan Taoist Chi-Chi opened their eyes and hurriedly came to Zhoutu to look deep into the extreme sea. I saw the sky there was broken, the stars were broken, the starry sky was wiped out stiffly, and the violent howling wind peculiar to the void poured into this polar sea area, a scene of extinction. Master of Wushuang Palace, I'm afraid it's in danger. Daoyan's Supreme frowned and looked away. What to do? Shall we help the master of the Wushuang Palace? Said the Taoist. Wait a second, because of the restrictions we face in this virtual universe, it's just a matter of trouble. Dao Yin shook his head, and the zombie trapped in the cage of divine power, still curled up in the cage, covered with blood, there is no trace of recovery. He also noticed the scent of destruction that came from the depths of the extreme sea, and the erect pupil of the Yin gaze looked distantly. It's weird. Why would I want him to pass it? The heavenly gate above the broken sky is already dim. After killing 6 snakeheads one after another, Jian Wushuang is about to reach the point of exhaustion, and the dark mist surging around that dark zombie has disappeared. Sword unparalleled. Only the 3 snakeheads of the huge zombie demon uttered a shout of rage. After you are beheaded and killed, all the creatures of the divine universe will be swallowed up by me. The fury ignited instantly. Jian Wushuang only felt hot, and the style of Tianmenju who defeated the true shadow of the virtual came again. Countless gods emerged. Thousands of gods and treasures carried the power of the gods directly to the zombie ghost. Just for a moment, like thousands of big suns exploding together, in the presence of the extreme day, the zombie virtual state is also as small as a sea chestnut. Like the water droplets under the red sun, the huge imagination disappeared completely. The sky gate suspended in the broken dome dissipated at the same time and turned into a speckled star pattern and returned to Jian Wushuang's body. He coughed and then wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth with his sleeve. Huang divine power dispersed day by day, and only a faint layer of black and gray remained in the position of the snake god, which dispersed with the wind. Finally, is it dead? The zombie figure dissipated, but Jian Wushuang always felt that something was wrong. The next moment, those black and white ash that are about to fall away, but they are coagulating. The most unwilling Jian Jinshuang to see, even helpless figure, came Su Shun. Jian Wuhuang trembled, his mouth bitter. That condensed figure is the pinnacle of the void universe, and a single palm is enough to kill any invincible supreme god. That is the nightmare that Jian Wushuang still does not want to face. His return will represent the countdown to the complete destruction of the magical universe. No, it can't be him. How could he return from the seal of the God of God so quickly? All these are illusions. Illusions! Jian Wushuang shook his head vigorously, as if to disperse the figure from his mind. The horror figure hidden in the black mist was surging with imagination, and 2 pairs of red eyes looked at Jian Wushuang without any emotion. I said that we will meet again. Jian Wushuang trembled. Facing this ancestral existence, he knew that all escape was futile. Like the burning black flames of the same group, Xian Shen waved a picture in the sky. I saw that in that magnificent scroll, countless star domain fuckingdoms were destroyed by the invading vanity, and countless souls were easily killed in this catastrophe. From the trafficker to death, to the invincible supreme, all died in blood. Jian Wushuang saw that his children and grandchildren were slaughtered by a 6-spot Su Zun in resistance, as cold as a frost, and the fairy fell into the mountain stream. And the giant axe's head was cut off by his own axe. The cold King 9 calamities finally exploded in the extraterrestrial battlefield. Everything is paved with blood. No, don't. Jian Wushuang was completely insane. How can I take the first step? Like a ghostly ghost, his body flickered like a mist, and a low voice sounded from his mouth. Submit to me. I promise you that your loved ones and you will continue to live and enjoy the glory of the past. The long hair that broke the girdle danced wildly in the air, and the already dimmed divine pattern skyrocketed again. Jian Wushuang is completely crazy, his eyes are red, and an invisible long sword has slowly formed from his right hand, you all. Wait for me. The last soft word sounded from Jian Wushuang's mouth. He held up the invisible sword condensed by the pattern in his hand and transformed himself into a Tao. Xingha Huhai Jiani, the first style, Xing. The polar sea is completely turbulent, and the huge waves rising from the sky are completely integrated with the broken sky. A little star is born as if in the ancient floods. With the invisible sword body, the divine power condenses the sword handle, the long wind gathers the blade, the pattern injects it in between, and it becomes the kendo, the most ordinary and magnificent sword. With his ultimate kendo completely released, the world is clear, the gods are magnificent. Wait for me, I will be with you soon. Chapter 46:04. Straightforward, never before breathe into the sky with a breath of horror. The virtual shadow treasure phase turns into a huge rushing sword. After breaking the starry sky easily, centered on the virtual god. Jihai was separated from the middle of the abyss by the sword in the middle, and the rushing sea blocked everything. The Huang pattern burst into the sky, forming countless bursts. Any breath in this style of sword is quickly nirvana. The virtual still stood there, like an image, and gradually receded. Only the red eyes disappeared completely when the body disappeared. At this moment, the heavens, the sea, the stars, and the sea are all chaos. The sword Wushuang, completely evacuated with divine power, was covered with divine patterns, and his eyes were scattered. Then his body plummeted into the abyss of the extreme sea. In the abyss of the heavens that were separated by the Xinghe Lake and the Sea of Swords, countless currents suddenly rose like a shocking dragon, forming a huge black virtual image. Jian Wushuang's straight shape finally fell into the palm of that huge black virtual image. A drop of crystalline water drops slipped from the eyes of the virtual image, and finally dropped on Jian Wushuang's forehead. On the polar coast, all the mountains and the land were shaken, and the cracks as deep as the gullies opened the mountains and rivers. Tao Yen, standing on the head of the universe, shivered, and after looking at the Taoist, he was ready to immediately support Jian Wushuang. As the polar sea surged, the violent waves poured directly on the shore, almost drowning most of the deity's cages. The zombie, who was dying after experiencing the black water surging around him, immediately rejoiced, "God help me too!" The pure black scales regrown, and the broken arm, along with the 8 heads that were cut off, were growing at an extremely fast speed. At this moment, the sudden change is happening. Above the originally broken sky, a layer of enchantment ripples suddenly appeared. A total of 3 figures came out of it. If Jian Wushuang is at this moment, he will definitely recognize these 3 figures. The first one to come out was hiding in the black mist. Only one bit of red-eyed pupil was exposed. Then ate 2 and walked out side by side with the former sect Emperor Bahuang Xuzong, the yet-to-be-moved Tao Yen Supreme, and the Taoists stopped their figure and saw bitterness in their eyes. And the zombie, who was madly absorbing the black water, saw the 3 figures suddenly frightened. The headed one, Yen Yi, first glanced at Dao Yen, then glanced at the snake bound by the cage of divine power. "He's there, you can absorb him, and the semi-ancestors will be completely stable." An indifferent voice came out from his mouth. 8 desolate, respectfully promised, and then slowly walked out, a breath of supreme terror surpassing the 6 marks. Feeling the more mysterious and special realm, the 8 desolate revelers reveled in it. "Everything is gifted to me by Lord Eater, and it's time for me to return to Lord Eater. Where am I? Is this the world after death?" In the shattered sky, countless gale winds raged, and the stars that shattered into powder were spreading out, which also seemed extremely mysterious. When the sword unparalleled murmured, a low voice sounded. "Hey boy, you've woke up and plan to continue playing dead." A fierce hit. The sword unparalleled jumped up. When he looked in, he saw a shadow wearing a corrugated black water robe on the infinitely dark water, and finally stood in front of Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang stepped back subconsciously, but hit a wet object. Then 10, 100, 1,000, still in the shape of dripping water, stretched out their palms together and pushed the sword Wushuang towards the dark shadow. Ku! The sword did not double dry and swallow a few times, and the meridian did not know when it was full of divine power. Don't plan to use your previous moves, although gorgeous enough, but for me, it's not enough for me to sneeze. The deep voice came from the shadow of the black water robe, and the disdainful taste in the words overflowed the words. Jian Wushuang stunned and immediately hesitated, not even as powerful as a sneeze. Your cowhide is too big. However, next, the shadow under the black water robe slowly raised his head, and with only one glance, Jian Wushuang closed his mouth honestly. The meaning of that unclear sight included everything: the extinction of the universe, the disappearance of the famine, and the uniqueness of all times. With just one glance, Jian Wushuang kept silent. He felt a sense of powerlessness in the solitude of nothingness that had not even appeared at the beginning of all life. With just one glance, negative emotions breed wildly. Regaining that look, the shadow of the black water robe reopened again, with a little interest in the rare tone. Next, tell me the most direct thought in your heart. What would you do if your universe was about to be completely destroyed? Jian Wushuang's eyes immediately cooled down, even though the existence before him at this moment had exceeded his cognition. Trying to calm his heart, Jian Wushuang said, "As long as I'm still alive, my universe won't fall before me." Oh, what if you finally find that you can't get back to the sky with your own strength? The shadow of the black water robe is ironic. Then I will disappear with the entire universe. Jian Wushuang said indifferently. The shadow of the black water robe did not speak again. It seemed that after a long time, his slightly lazy voice sounded again. If you have three choices, one is to die together with the universe by your own strength, the other is to surrender to the hostile universe to protect your beloved relatives and friends, and the third is to get the help of external forces to lead your own counterattack until you kill the hostile universe without leaving any soul. Which one would you choose? Three options echoed in Jian Wushuang's mind without any hesitation. He slowly said, "I choose 3. Interesting, interesting." He seemed to be very excited with ripples on the black robe. But once you choose this path, the past loved ones and even the entire universe will not understand you and spit it out. How about you? Taking a deep breath, Jian Wushuang was extremely calm. Even if I am utterly lost, I am abandoned by the loved ones of the world, I will never regret it. The black water robe completely surging, the endless water waves receded, and a wide black robe appeared in Jian Wushuang's eyes. A disastrous palm stretched out from under the black robe, and slowly pulled down the hood, revealing a young and old face. Eyes without white eyes were like the purest origin. He looked at Xiang Jian Wushuang, and then extruded a smile that seemed to cry, "I don't have a name, but I used to call me Lao Zun." Chapter 46:05. Even the most difficult memories passed away in those extreme years. 2 completely black eyes, as in the cycle of reincarnation, reflected the past death of Jian Wushuang. Don't look into my eyes. With your little experience, it's easy to get lost in the hallucinations. The shadow of the black water robe, who claims to be old, reminded in a deep voice, Sword Wu Shuang awakened from the mud-like memory, and Shuang Yu sweated. It's too weird. It's too scary. What kind of existence is he? Boy, don't try to figure me out. I can easily see your thoughts and thoughts. Lao Zun drew a smile on some sickly pale face. Jian Wushuang quickly abandoned the distractions and kept his heart firmly. You are the only guy who has appetite for me after my old friends, so I plan to help you once. Lao Zun said indifferently, Help once. How do you help? Jian Wushuang was confused. Somehow, Lao Zun's figure suddenly turned into a puddle of black water and fell into the polar sea, then quietly condensed behind him, without the slightest white eyes looking into the distance. I know from your consciousness that the universe in which you exist seems to be suffering a calamity, and everyone has no means to catch it. It has completely fallen, and the distance to complete destruction is only a matter of time. Now, I have decided to help you to completely reverse this original inability to return to the end, and everything you have seen before will never happen again. The sudden foreign aid did not make Jian Wushuang lose his mind. He groaned for a moment, looked up, and said to Lao Zun, What about the conditions? Lao Zun raised his mouth slightly. There are 2 conditions. The first condition is very simple. It completely destroys the hostile universe without leaving any soul. Jian Wushuang's heart trembled. This first condition was obviously his third option before. Why? This is beginning to regret it. Lao Zun sneered. Jian Wushuang did not speak, staring at him tightly, already determined. I promise you, what is the second condition? Lao Zun smiled with satisfaction. Once agreed is a contract and cannot be changed. As for the second condition, I will say it based on the completion of the first condition. After that, he flicked his fingers, and a drop of black water drops fell on the right arm of Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang hurriedly opened his sleeves and saw a tear-like drop of water on the wrist of his right arm. It seemed to feel his worry. Lao Zun added, This is a part of my mind, used for communication between you and me, and does no harm to you. Jian Wushuang was slightly relieved, but he still had vigilant thoughts about this extremely mysterious person. No longer paying attention to Jian Wushuang, Lao Zun turned slowly and stared at the dark and extremely polar sea that flowed horizontally. I'm afraid no one would have thought that I would go back to see you one day. Old palace master, hurry up. In the infinite expanses of imagination, the Taoist bathed in blood and exploded with his body, and finally the most terrible blow broke out. The mountains and rivers were crushed into powder by this blow. However, this blow that was blown with his body was easily destroyed by the 8 desolates. The monstrous palm directly crushes the mover. The 8 desolate and exalted lords who exude demon-blooded blood all over the body, I do not know what secret method to use, have already taken that step and reached the semi-ancestor level. Well, I have long noticed that your motivation is impure. I originally intended to save you a life. I never wanted you to die. Instead, he dispelled the bloodstains, and Bahuang Xuanzhuang hated his lips. Then he cast his gaze on the blood-stained, dying Dao Yan, and there was a drool in his eyes. Bahuang, this is not something you can touch. A cold voice of biting sounded from behind. Bahuang Shuzuan hurriedly promised and ran to the zombie. The black mist condensed, and when he came to Dao Yan's supreme, Give me your feelings, and I will spare you for the time being. He coughed a ray of divine blood. Dao Yan looked at him calmly. All my things belong to the divine universe. Even if the body is dead, you don't want to get half your fingers. Why bother? Give it to me now, and I can still let you die decently. Otherwise, I can only kill you first, and then draw out your feelings inch by inch. Xing was suspended immediately, and the naive hiding behind him fell on the deck. Dao Yan was not afraid, and his face was despised. So, you can just take it. Yenny stopped talking and reached out to Dao Yan's chest. Huh, what's your feeling? Bit E was directly puzzled. Dao Yan laughed supremely. It's ridiculous. I said this, my thing, the virtual universe, don't want to be half-finger. No longer speaks. Yenny rises up like countless snakes tearing Dao Yan into pieces. At this point, Dao Yan is supreme, falling into the universe. In the large spaceship of Nuwa, there was only one naive. This seat is already like this. You still do not spare. Is it true that this seat has no backhand? In the cage of divine power, 70% to 80% of the zombie gods were restored, and his eyes looked at the 8 desolate emperor in front of him coldly. Only you now. The 8 wilds who belonged to the peak of the ancestral class swelled with a scornful smile. Even if you are at the peak, you are no longer my opponent. Give me your feelings to me, I makes you look better. With their noses fused together, the zombie still fights for the sleepy beast. When Ba Huangshuan looked cold, he raised his palm and drew to the zombie god. OM. The extreme sea trembled. The water level suddenly rose 1,000 feet. The waves were surging, and the 2 bodies came on the tide. Sword unparalleled. When the zombie opened his pupils, a feeling of being born dead came to his heart. He didn't want to, and yelled, sword unparalleled, Tao Yen supreme, and Elder Qinshan have died in their hands. Noisy. A look of disgust flashed in the eyes of Bahuang Shuzuan, slamming his palm on the zombie. A divine power came swiftly, and it was about to hit the Badlands. Bahuang Shuzuan was forced to retreat. The sword had no stature, and he lifted the Taro sword to his right arm. Laugh. The entire right arm of Bahuang Shuzuan was cut off by the roots. Before he could scream, he was kicked hundreds of feet away by Jian Wushuang. Put away the Tai Luo divine sword. Sword Wushuang looked and did not look at the zombie god. The body swept towards the cosmic boat. He had a strong bad feeling. Hidden in the dark fog, he looked at Xiang Jinshuang calmly. Let's meet again. Fart less. What about Elder Daoyan and Elder Moving Mountain? Jian Wu's eyes were so cold that his palms were already on the hilt of his waist. These 2 guys? Bite shrugged slightly. I just wiped them out. The pupils shrank suddenly. Jian Wushuang roared, You it! Thousands of swords rise up against the sky, pointing at one. Emperor Jiutian. Chapter 46:06. The magnificent Tianmen emerged, and one of the giant fingers of the sky sank heavily. Wandao normalization transformed into the most common one, cut to 1. Presumptuous. Yen Erliang, who hadn't said anything, drank a bit, even surpassing Yen to meet the sword. 1 red, 1 black, and 2 bright lights collided, as if training. It was even too late to be proud, and that bland sword-likeness instantly ripped off the second light of the 2 and went straight away. The pupil shrank, and the great terror between life and death made Yen air dull on the spot. How could he not have thought that he would only tear his defense with his own strength for the half-step invincible supreme swordmaster? On the broken sky, the giant finger of the heavenly gate was pressed down at the same time. This polar starfish field completely shattered. The more distant stars burst, and the earth eventually shattered. Boom. Sword E aspect and Tianmen giant fingers pressed on the body of Bite 2. The polar daylight covered everything, and the hurricane swept the remaining broken earth. I don't know how long it took until the burst finally dissipated, and Jian Wushuang was able to see everything in front of him. The broken void, intact Yanzi, holding Yanzi almost torn from the middle, stood in place. The blood of God couldn't stop flowing out of the wound. Apparently, there was more air out and less air intake. Sir, Ba Huangshuan rushed forward, and although his arms had grown back, the whole man was extremely embarrassed, raised his hand, and sent the dying Yen air in his arms to the hands of Bahuang Suozhen, and Yen Yi slowly walked towards Jian Wushuang in the void. With every step he took, the void sank and cracked. A supremely weak force is like a giant sea galloping. That is a breath belonging to the semi-ancestor class. Jian Wushuang also waited. Jian Wushuang, you shouldn't have existed. If you are not his disciple, I will definitely try to sue the emperor to the emperor and include you in the organization. Unfortunately, if you are his disciple, you must be kept. A slightly regretful voice resounded from under the mask of Bit 1, and the breath that originally belonged to the semi-ancestor level went up a step and finally condensed in that mysterious realm. You have to be in a natural posture like a monster, and you can kill the ancestral realm in a half-step invincible state. But you know that the most important thing is the genius who is more genius than you. Top. The sound of bite. He sounded 9 days and 10 places. He has taken that step completely and reached the ancestor level. Promoting the ancestor to the semi-ancestor level is a natural sound that can never be made up with hard work. That's the real puppet. Only the luck of the universe can be used to break through that puppet. The fortune of the virtual universe is almost dry up. How can it possibly give birth to another ancestor? The true horror virtual power condensed, as if it drove the entire virtual universe towards the sword without a double pressure. The ancestral breath almost appeared, and everything became a foregone conclusion. Sword unparalleled. Death in my hands is your ultimate destination. Countless red phantoms turned into 6 big hands, gradually condensed behind one, and the rules of the heavens and the earth were drawn on each palm. And Jian Wushuang still stood in place. His eyes gradually changed from the initial complexity to calm. The zombie eyes curled up in the cage of divine power were crumbling. Let me out, let me out. If it was before, Jian Wushuang could only close his eyes and wait for death. But now, everything has changed. A huge dark red arm, grasping the power of the rules of heaven and earth, crushed the sword without a match. Later, there were 2 arms, one on the other and one on the other, like the sun and the moon, and they were also suppressed. The stars and stars are all broken, and even the void that represents nothingness begins to collapse in a large area under the ancestral atmosphere. Looking at the 3 arms that cover the sky, Jian Wushuang just swept back and forth without worrying about the danger he was in. The zombie in the divine power cage is already crazy, hitting the cage crazy, trying to escape. Feeling the warmth coming from his wrists, Jian Wushuang looked behind him. The old respect came from the tide, with his right hand on his back, and a left hand holding a water stick transformed from the sea current. The tip of the wand touched the void, and countless small, dense, dark, and black mansions suddenly rushed and proliferated in all directions. I do know how many polar regions of the starry sky are surging. The huge waves rise into the sky, and a black virtual image is transfigured. The 3 arms behind Bit 1 swept across eternity with an unstoppable ancestral breath. But when countless miles of frost-like blackness covered the void, hundreds of thousands of miles across the eternal arms seemed to have been cut off from the rules and disappeared with the speed visible to the naked eye. At the same time, the black virtual image transformed from the polar sea came out of the polar sea and smashed into one of the 3 arms. Boom! The blast burst through Huanyu, and the crimson arm was directly smashed by the black virtual image. And 2 successive punches, the 2 light and dark arms that were stagnated in the void, were also broken. The black virtual image was full of ripples and slammed into the one that stood in the void, devouring and humming. Instead of stepping back, he rushed up. At the same instant, the 3 huge arms remaining behind condense into a sharp giant spear, stabbing into the chest of the black virtual image. Time seemed to stagnate. Thousands of crimson cracks emerged from the heart of the black virtual image, and then completely collapsed, returning to the polar sea current. The Bite figure re-emerged, and the ancestral breath was still vast and long. A scarlet, one-eyed man turned from Jian Wushuang's body to Lao Zun, revealing a dreadful color. At the same time, a strange card with a metallic luster appeared in his hand. Jian Wushuang's heart trembled, and the dimensional reduction blow of that weird card impressed him. If it wasn't for the last shot of Gap Supreme, he would have no way to escape the weird energy in that card. Just when he was about to remind Lao Zun to be careful, he found that Lao Zun's figure had disappeared sometime. This strange energy wave, although weak and abnormal, should not be a product of this universe. The low voice quietly rang from behind Yi's ear. He almost thought about it, and threw the card directly behind him. As the tide emerged, Lao Zun's pale palm gripped the card directly. With a click, the card that even the invincible Supreme couldn't help was crushed easily by the old Supreme. Into powder, biting a pupil and shrinking, the regular arm behind him pierced directly towards Lao Zun's heart. The water waves flow and the body dissipates. When his body reappears, he is eating the front. Tell me, who gave you this kind of thing, and who has the energy stored in it? Lao Zun's voice was full of irrefutable majesty. At the same time, his palm was stretched forward, and a beam of black light emerged, which directly tore a regular arm behind Bite. "You-it!" Eater went crazy, and he has never been so humiliated since following the Emperor. Chapter 46:07. At the moment, this guy who doesn't know where to come out actually ruins the regular arm so lightly. That's the rule he just got when he was promoted to the Ancestor. When he successfully promoted to the Ancestor level, he had absolute self-confidence and fought against the virtual with the card from the Emperor. But now all of his arrogance and whole cards have been stamped on the soles of the foot by this sick-like guy. Say, don't say it. Lao Zun's voice was cold, and he reached out his hand, flicking the regular arm behind him like a breeze, and then broke one arm. Eat a complete madness. The last remaining regular arm, carrying an endless ancestral breath, turned into a giant spear and pierced the Lao Zun. Lao Zun showed no contempt, and only stretched out in his right hand to gently touch. After a while, a fine, dark crack emerged from the forefront of the regular arm, and then quickly spread. Just a breath, it broke the regular arm. I can't believe that even if he is fighting against Su Shin now, it's enough to shout hard, and coupled with the endless pile of cards, I am afraid that even Su Shin has long been out of sight. But now the sudden emergence of the sixth sister-in-law just disperses his ancestral strength with one finger. Who is he? The chill rose from the bottom of my heart, and I no longer hesitated, urging the breath in the origin of my life directly. The void is completely collapsed and cracked, with one bit as the center. An indescribable terror force surges suddenly, as the terrifying dragon builds a very special energy field in the void. And Lao Zun is also in this fierce, surging special in the energy. He avoided the sharp edge and stood back behind Jian Wushuang in a flash. Special red mansions and black light shuttle through it, quickly sketching a mysterious virtual image. The runes that exude faint fluorescence hovered around the virtual image, and a black gold mantle leaf moved with the wind. It was just that the face of the imaginary image was completely hidden in the fog, and it was not real at all. Only an imperial crown emerged through the fog. Seeing this imaginary image, the weakest one went down to his knees. I've seen Lord Eater. Jian Wu's figure shook, looking at the virtual image of the crowned emperor crown, and suddenly realized something. The eternal arrogance of that year, overwhelming the geniuses of the peoples with their own strength, and created the Tai Luo Supreme of the Tai Luo Sword Code, was killed in the hands of the Emperor of the Name. However, this virtual image of the crowned Emperor crown only existed for a moment. The virtual image reached out and swept around, including Yen and Bahuang Suzun, and then quickly dissipated. From appearing to disappearing, there is only a few dozen breaths, and then everything returns to calm and nothingness. A drop of cold sweat flowed out from the horns of Jian Wushuang, and the barren breath emanating from the virtual body was different from the ancestor, but similar to the ancestor. Even the old-fashioned ancestors, such as the gods of the earth and the gods of imagination, have never had the idea of making Jian Wushuang tremble. Only two people let Jian Wushuang have this kind of thought. One is an old respect who came out of the dark and extreme sea and came from the tide. The other one is the one that the emperor invited to come out of. The emergence of these two existences made Jian Wushuang suspect that the true top of the universe is not the ancestor. While Jian Wushuang was thinking wildly, the old man beside him sighed slightly. It seems that the rules of this universe still restrain me quite a lot. Jian Wushuang was silent, just that Lao Zun pointed a moment ago, and the suppression of the ancestors was already a thing he could not imagine. When he reached the mouth, he swallowed again, and then Jian Wushuang swept towards the broken spaceship. The small, childish figure curled up in a corner, eyes full of panic. When he saw Jian Wushuang, he immediately rushed over and wept in a low voice. The smelly chest basket, Elder Dao Yen, and the elders who moved the mountain, they are all dead. Jian Wushuang's eyes were dim, and as soon as he returned from the polar sea, he had realized that their breath had completely dissipated. "One bite, I will kill you." Swordless eyes sink like water. I want to go home and never want to stay here again." Big tears slipped from the naive eyes, and everything that has gone through in recent days has almost made her on the verge of collapse. If it wasn't for sword warriors, I'm afraid she would have the body disappeared. Jian Wushuang nodded. "Okay, let's go home and go home now. It's time to set off, and your mission should start." Lao Zun's figure appeared on the deck, reminding Jian Shuang. Jian Wushuang did not speak. Even if there is no reminder from Lao Zun that revenge that has long been accumulated in the heart, it is time to start. Now that you have launched this war of catastrophe, you also need to be aware of the consequences. Leaving the fragmented polar starfish field, the dilapidated spacecraft quickly shuttled through the major star fields. It has been in the virtual universe for 2 years, but it seems like a moment. The battle along the way has made Jian Wushuang grow a lot, and the half-step invincible state has been completely stabilized in this battle. The rapid howling wind blew the hunting robe of Jian Wushuang's robe sitting cross-legged on the head of the universe boat. He took a thumb-sized seed from his arms and nurtured it with divine power. That is the last source of life left by Dao Yen Supreme, which may regenerate the mind after millions of chaos eras. What Jian Wushuang can do now is to be careful and nourishing. A jasper-like tender bud was slowly drawn out, and Sword Wushuang laughed. What people fear most is not the unknown darkness, but the hope is gone. There is no dawn. The magical universe is like this jasper bud, and the fire remains. How can it fall forever? She lost all strength and became a zombie like a normal person, looking at Jian Wushuang in fear and horror. In his body, the deepest source of life has planted a life restraint belonging to Jian Wushuang. Since then, his life is completely in the hands of Jian Wushuang. Unless Swordless Twins zombies study its billions of chaos, it will be subject to checks and balances. The old respected sitting on the top of the virtual universe boat. From the moment he saw the naive, he became interested and sometimes changed various shapes to tease the naive. Helpless today, in addition to being close to Jian Wushuang, the rest are treated like flood beasts. Lao Zun can only give up. After a month of patrolling, Jian Wushuang finally came to the 23 cracks again, waving his hand to kill nearly 20 ordinary vanity guarding the enchantment. This spaceship of the magical universe has finally left the virtual universe. the enchantment ripples, and the cosmic boat stops at the most marginal level of the divine universe. Howling winds are raging, and even ordinary supremes can hardly stay in this environment for too long. Jian Wushuang glanced back, then urged the spacecraft, and rushed away in the direction of the sad land. Chapter 4608. The bleak star field is still there. If there is no war between the two universes, I am afraid that this kind of marginal zone will not have anyone at the end of the extreme time. As the spacecraft moved forward, the subtle imagination of force flowing in the dreary star field still made Jian Wushuang frown. Has anyone in the virtual universe started to enter the vicinity of sadness? With this in mind, Jian Wushuang started to feel uneasy. The disciples of life in the land of tragedy and sorrow are one of the salaries of the divine universe. If the existence of this organization is here, the consequences will be disastrous. Thinking of this, Jian Wushuang no longer dared to stop and immediately drove the cosmic boat to rush to the tragedy. After sprinting for more than a month, Jian Wushuang slammed into the group he didn't want to see. A black suit and black face armor, showing only a red eye, is a sign of phagocytosis. At this moment, the total of 4 people rushed from the direction of the path of tragedy. The head of the group, after seeing this dilapidated cosmic boat, immediately froze in place. Just when Jian Wushuang was lifting his divine power and preparing for a fierce battle, the members of the 4 phages turned into 4 lightning bolts, bypassing the spacecraft directly, and then swept away in the direction of the virtual universe. Lao Zun, who was sitting on the top of the cosmic boat, just opened his eyes and took a look at the place where the tissues left, and then continued to sleep with his eyes closed. Just let's go like this. Jian Wushuang was so confused that he didn't stay too much and continued to sweep away towards the tragedy. After more than half a month, the spacecraft finally arrived at the place of tragedy. Looking at the more familiar passageway, Jian Wushuang was relieved, but when he looked at the emperor's ancestral site, not far away, he thought deeply. Those members of the Bite organization did not enter the land of tragedy. Did they enter the emperor's ancestral site? The one who has been promoted to the ancestral level is related to this emperor's ancestral site. After a little thought, Jian Wushuang drove the cosmic boat into the land of tragedy. There are no more weird ghosts and crying long songs in the dark channel, just like the ordinary to the ordinary channel. Passing through the final enchantment, Wang Huang's prestige came into his eyes. The divine power contained in this site, which is now called the Burial Land, even the old statue lying on the top of the cosmic boat bounced up in an instant. Even the pure black eyes are full of bright colors. It's such a blessed place. I really didn't expect it. Lao Zun murmured softly. Jian Wushuang didn't hear what Lao Zun was saying. He landed in the spacecraft early and swept deep into the burial ground. There are tens of thousands of dojos in all sizes, which are spectacular. On each side of the path, there is a disciple of the life shrine practicing meditation. At this moment, the Great Axe Supreme and the Heavenly Supreme are teaching a group of disciples who have just been promoted to the Supreme Divine realm how to proficiently regulate their own meridians. King Jujia, who was wearing a white shirt, was lying in his dojo together with Lon Lon, supervising the disciples for laziness. The Blood Wave Supreme, who had been in retreat until Jian Wushuang left, was already awake, and she continued to practice her perception in front of thousands of dojos. This kind of supervision task has been done for several years by King Jujia. When he inadvertently yawned, a young ranger in black and black robe appeared in his eyes. Sword unparalleled. The king of Jujia directly ejected, and when he saw that this guy was really Jian Wushuang, he hugged his arms with open arms. Hey, lightly, it's not like I haven't seen each other for hundreds of years. Jian Wushuang smiled, but his arms were hugged heavily. No matter when and where they are, the king of 9 calamities, and the palace of life have been regarded by Jian Wushuang as an integral part of life. Loosing the sword unparalleled, King Jiuzai looked at it carefully, and then smiled. The realm has advanced a lot. I knew I would follow you before I knew it. Jian Wushuang smiled. During my time, let's see nothing happen here. King Jujia said, nothing happens, everything is normal. In addition, I have good news for you. Over the past few years, more than 90 disciples have broken through the ultimate and reached the supreme state of God. Jian Wushuang laughed. It's really good news. There are nearly 400 supreme people, which is enough to affect the whole battle. Between the two of them, the Great Axe Supreme and the Heavenly Supreme have also discovered the return of Jian Wushuang and are happy to run. The Master of Wushuang Palace, the late Axe and Tentacle are late. The two arched their hands, a little more excited between their eyes. I've seen the Master of Wushuang Palace. Lan Lan laughed. Lung Rushuang also rushed forward, facing the lingering person. She couldn't help it anymore, and opened her arms and hugged Jian Wushuang tightly. Worried you, ma'am? Jian Wushuang patted his back frostily, forbearing the tears in his eyes. Lung Rushuang said, I will go with you in such a dangerous place in the future. Jian Wushuang smiled bitterly. It's up to you, it's up to you. Kneeling on the deck, looking through the gap in the railing, the young child stared blankly at the warm scene with red eyes. What's the matter, little girl? Is there any sad thing? Lao Zun did not know when she appeared next to Juvenile, and her dark pupil reflected her figure. The naive hurriedly rubbed his eyes. No, it's sand in my eyes. Lao Zun shook his head helplessly, looking at Jian Wushuang not far away, and looked at the naive, then said lightly, Let's go, little girl, we should go on. Blood Supreme has broken through Invincible Supreme. Has that step been taken? Hearing the determination of the great axe, Jian Wushuang nodded. Invincible, Supreme jumps to the semi-ancestor level, even harder than the semi-ancestor level to enter the ancestor level. From life to 2, it is never difficult. It is rare to have one from its roots. And moving from invincible to semi-ancestor level is born from the source. That is a completely unimaginable path. You can see yourself from the perplexity, self-awareness, and self-awareness. Each step is a process of continuous denial and remodeling, just like the nirvana of Phoenix, and finally proves one's own way. And Bloodwave Supreme has successfully entered the semi-ancestor class. In this way, Just Our Shrine of Life has 2 semi-ancestors, and the high-end combat power of the Void Universe already has the power of one battle. The Supreme Axe analyzes that in his subconscious, Jian Wushuang has long been regarded as a semi-ancestor. But what should Sushin do to get out of the seal? Tina, Supreme, reminded in a timely manner. It seems that time is coming soon. After listening to the words of Supreme God, everyone was silent, just an ancestor of the false god, and without the checks and balances of the gods of the universe, who can resist? Chapter 46:09. The ancestors, whether they are the divine universe or the void universe, are at the top of their existence. That state has long been beyond everyone's imagination. All the details of the divine force universe, but between the hands of the virtual god, are enough to be destroyed. If it was the previous Jian Wushuang, I'm afraid I still feel helpless about this problem, but now he is no longer the original him. Yishali Town's semi-ancestors ate 2, and they can destroy one point of the virtual god. As long as it is not surrounded by many semi-ancestors, it is also the home of the divine universe. Jian Wushuang Confident can stabilize the high-end battlefield, and the only variables the virtual gods and the Byte organization now also have corresponding opponents. Jian Wushuang turned to look around. An old man in a black water robe, slowly carrying a childishness, with a special atmosphere like the entire polar sea behind him, full of endless power. The old man who signed the contract with Jian Wushuang from Gigi Starfield and did not know the origin has already stood with Jian Wushuang, feeling the special and undeniable energy fluctuations. Although the giant axe supreme and others did not show hostility, they also became cautious. At the same time, the supreme who was still meditating opened his eyes. The horror divine power belonging to the semi-ancestor class rises to the sky. The next moment, the figure will reach the front of Jian Wushuang, and the look of Lao Zun is extremely cautious. Extreme blood is his own. Jian Wushuang smiled bitterly, and then he briefly said how he would meet Lao Zun. However, Jian Wushuang passed the incident of Lao Zun easily killing one. After all, this situation, would say that it would mess up the minds of the disciples. After listening to Jian Shuang's words, the giant axe bowed his head. Since that being said, he is not a virtual universe. It is a person who belongs to my magical universe. Lao Zun did not speak, and naturally stood with Jian Wushuang behind him. What's this again? Giant axe looked puzzled to Juvenile. Jian Wu's eyes were dimmed. It's the ancestor of Feng Tian's ancestor. It's called Juvenile. The atmosphere was suddenly dignified, and for a while everyone was deeply disgusted with the evil actions of the virtual universe. Master of Wushuang Palace, all disciples in the Palace of Life, listen to the dispatch, and never die. Blood Wave Supreme arched his hands on one knee. Tens of thousands of sounds sounded at the same time, shaking the sky. Jian Wushuang smiled and looked steadfastly into the distance. Okay, get together. Go back to where we belong. With a plan in place, the disciples of Life's Shrine in the Path of Tragedy began to board the spacecraft and were ready to leave. Standing at the head of the first cosmic boat, Jian Wushuang looked at the still burial place of God with gratitude in his eyes, and then bowed deeply. The familiar scene gradually went away. The 10,000 square dojos were lifted and lifted by the power of the Lord, and they remained as they were, as if they had just left for a while and would soon return to their respective dojos. Every disciple in the Palace of Life knows that most of them will fall on the battlefield on that side, but they still looked back, just like doing a trivial thing. This is their responsibility and their mission. After leaving the place of tragedy, Jian Wushuang's eyes looked at the emperor's ancestral site. After hesitating for a moment, he finally gave up. The fallen divine universe must not be delayed every moment. Shushan still hasn't returned. Jian Wushuang decided to completely kill the living force of Shushui in this period. In 3 months, 3 cosmic boats began to approach the extraterrestrial battlefield from the extreme edge of the divine universe. As it gets closer to the extraterrestrial battlefield, some magic shards breaking in the void, and the wreckage of the supreme divine realm begin to appear. Countless blood of gods converge into rivers floating in the void, and they will continue to flow for tens of thousands of chaotic eras until they slowly become nutrients and are absorbed by the universe. On the battlefield outside the territory, there is no longer a fight against the broken starry sky. Only the supreme wreckage floats miserably in the void. It wasn't until the base camp that was originally occupied by the gods of the gods that Jian Wushuang felt the surging force. From a distance, it's just the vanity of the outside inspection that is no less than 15, let alone the rest of the vanity that has occupied the base camp. Forbearing the anger in his heart, Jian Wushuang signaled that the cosmic boat was docked far away, carrying Lao Zun and the pool of blood, and quietly touched the base camp. Regarding Jian Wushuang's business association, Lao Zun never refuted or denied, as if he was going to do what Lao Zun did. Even if the sword is the lowest in the trio, it also has the strength comparable to the semi-ancestor level. In the face of such a group of vain princes that are not repaired by the 3 marks, it is simple to kill. But if you want to do it quietly, there will be some difficulties. When Jian Wushuang was preparing to release the season control of Tai Luo Sword Code, the familiar barren atmosphere escaped from Laozuan. Dark crystals emerged from the void and instantly covered the outer periphery of the base camp like frost. A patrol team of 14 people seemed to be mired in a quagmire and stopped silently. The breath was frozen, and the quiet surroundings seemed to hear no wind. The sword was unparalleled. After greeting, he rushed over first and waved his palm. The immense power was like thunder and punishment, and the 14 virtual respects were crushed into powder. Even if he had been promoted to the semi-ancestor level, after seeing such an understatement of Jian Wushuang and killing more than a dozen virtual respects, he couldn't help but breathe a sigh of cold air, and his heart was hot immediately. In just 1 year, Jian Wushuang can directly suppress so many vanity. If it is 1,000,000 years later, will he accomplish the next cosmic and lead the divine universe out of trouble? 1,000,000 years is just a retreat for them, but it has endless possibilities. If Bloodwave Supreme knew that long ago, when Jian Wushuang nearly killed the half-ancestors with their own power, I am afraid that my jaw will be dislocated. After eradicating the patrol, the 3 bodies quietly entered the base camp in the magnificent palace. At this moment, there is a lot of staggering, and nearly 100 strong forms are gathered here talking and laughing, sitting at the top of the giant man. 6 marks on his shoulders flickered, hugging 2 shivering goddesses of the universe, laughing loudly. And in this hall full of virtual respect, sitting at the table next to the giant head, the power was surging. The handsome and elegant middle-aged man, a Confucian shirt, and 2 long dragon horns between black hair, illustrates his identity as a dragon. The heavenly divine power swirled around him, but at the moment he was happy with the vanity of the temple. If you see this scene, Jian Wushuang will surely find that this handsome and elegant dragon middle-aged man is the 3rd-generation blood of the dragon family, the brother of the dragon of the evil dragon family, in the invincible and supreme dragon Cyprus. Chapter 46:10. The incense burner in the central hall of the great hall was smoky, and the drunken 6-marked venerable drunkard kicked the table, twisted the ugly and weird figure, and began to dance in the hall. Long Bai sat in his place. A flash of disgust flashed in his eyes, and was soon covered by a smile, and he applauded from time to time, as if watching a beautiful dance. The giant man sitting on the top laughed again, straightened the niece sitting on his left leg, opened his arms to the left and right, and twisted the maid's head down. Blood splattered, and the giant man unscrewed the head of another niece in accordance with the law, and the 2 heads fell into the hands of the giant man, like walnuts. Long Bai. A low, murky voice sounded from the mouth of Juan. The 200 nieces you sent are really good. Now I've enjoyed them almost, you see. Long Bai heard the words, and arched with a smile. Just follow the ambassador's word, and Longbow will offer another 300 virgins every day. The giant man known as Shangshu heard the words and nodded with satisfaction. It's so good. I will wait for Shushan to return in the future. I will ask the Shushan for help and leave your dragon clan still in charge of the original jurisdiction. Long Bai's eyes flashed a happy look, and he quickly arched his hands. Thank you, Lord. The dragons are willing to do their best to open up the territory for the virtual gods. Shangshu made a Yin chuckle with a strange tone. I heard that your dragon clan only breeds with your own clan. The women in the clan are all beautiful and healthy, and you are in good shape. If you don't do the following, you bring 10 women in the clan. A burst of anger appeared in his eyes, and Long Bai almost wanted to kill the sham in an instant, but stiffly put up with it. I don't understand the meaning of Shangshu. Long Bai almost gritted his teeth. Shangsu made Yin smile with a smile. As long as you bring 10 dragon women to this seat, The original jurisdiction of the dragon is unchanged, and you can choose the 7 domains for your own use. What? The inherent pride and dignity of the dragons were thoroughly humiliated, but the palms hidden under the sleeves of the Longbai robes slowly released. Then he changed the arch of arrogance. It's a big deal, and Su Longbai goes back and asks his ancestors for their opinions. After saying this sentence, Longbai sat back in dismay. The impeccable dragon leader who besieged the Temple of Life with all major forces, but now like a dog, begging for peace. He vaguely felt that the opinions of the ancestors were completely wrong, and they were totally wrong. But can everything be saved? Sitting on the top of the head, the imagination is extremely open, and this race known for pride can be humiliated by itself at this moment. The sense of conquest is far faster than the slaughter of the star domain. Shang Su sat on the back of the chair with satisfaction, wondering whether it was too much wine or too much yin, and his head began to feel dizzy. Everything began to spin in circles. Overlapping shadows appeared. Shang Shu tried to shake his head and glanced at the center of the giant hall. I don't know when he stood in 3 figures. Whoever is coming, quickly report what happened. Shang Zu's halberd fingered. However, it was not answered. With each step of the figure dressed by the ranger in front, the hall secretly scored a point. The staggered crowd of vain respects, as if frozen, were motionless. Shang Shu finally became awake, because he found in horror that his body could not move anymore. A blood shadow suddenly appeared in front of him, and the roar of Baju became the last voice heard by Shang Shu. Miscellaneous. Bloodwave Supreme stretched out his palm, and the semi-ancestor's divine power easily smashed his head. The blood mist gushed, and the hill-like figure collapsed. Everything seemed to play in slow motion. Longbai watched this scene completely, and his heart was completely cold. You disappoint me so much. You dragons disappoint me too. The sound of regret sounded, and a figure did not know when it appeared in front of Longbai. Longbai slowly raised his head. The cheek that was so familiar that he could no longer be familiar was now truly printed in his eyes. Sword unparalleled. The eyes of looking at that face were full of regrets. Somehow, the resentment in his heart disappeared without a trace, replaced by shame and guilt. Every ancient race that has existed since the floods and chaos, have your inner pride been eaten by dogs? Jian Wushuang glared at each other, holding Longbai's collar directly to pull him up. Longbai reacted, and a sense of shame rushed into his heart. The divine power belonging to the invincible Supreme directly drove the sword unparalleled by several steps. Insane swordsman, can you humiliate my dragon clan? Longbai said angrily. Upon hearing that, Jian Wushuang smiled coldly. It is never outsiders who humiliate you, but yourself. The stigma of being despised caused Longbai to lose his mind for a moment. He directly summoned a virtual image of his destiny, of mighty gold dragon, carrying supreme horror, and slammed into the sword. As long as Jian Wushuang is killed, the most disgraceful aspect of his dragon tribe will be unknown to outsiders. Boom! After the golden dragon virtual image hits the sword unparalleled, it is hard to get half an inch. Jian Wushuang responded with a palm, and then suddenly twisted, and the virtual image of Jinlong was broken into powder. Longbai himself was hit by a sledgehammer, and his body receded into the wall. Withdrawing his palm, Jian Wushuang stepped in front of Longbai, his eyes sinking like water. Then he slowly stretched out his palm, facing Longbai, and opened his bow from left to right and pulled up his big mouth. It was louder than it sounded, as if it sounded enough to crack the sky, echoed in the giant hall. After all the virtual lords in the giant hall were resolved, the Supreme Master of Blood and the Old Master stood side by side, watching Jian Wushuang twitching and waving intently. Blood. Shui, Bo Supreme pursed his lips. The old respect echoed, and nodded. I do not know how long it took before Jian Wushuang stopped beating, throwing his palms and drying the dragon's blood full of hands. And a head swelled into a basket, and his face looked like a dragon cypress with a dye shop on it. And finally he knelt down on the ground. The dragon cypress, that almost even had its original shape drawn out, was dull, but murmured, "I was wrong, I was wrong." Taking a deep breath, Jian Wushuang said, "It's not your fault alone. It's your entire dragon clan's fault. I'm going to discuss it." Longbai suddenly looked up. "Let me go. I will definitely persuade my ancestor when I go back." "You are not allowed to stay, but you are only a sacred place of the holy universe who captures the divine power of the universe, dedicated to the torture of the virtual universe. I will not be able to keep you," Jian Wushuang said lightly, as if the final judgment had been set. Longbai heard that, as if evacuated all his strength. He sat paralyzed suddenly. "If this is the case, then please help me bring a word to the ancestors of the Dragon Clan, so that they don't go on wrong. Man is dying, and his words are good. The bird is dying, and its song is also mourning." Chapter 46:11. Jian Wushuang nodded, then took the palm as a sword, and took off Longbei's head. The generation of dragons is invincible and extinct. The breath of the dragon enforcer, though far-reaching, never appeared. Master of the warrior's palace, shall we move on, or will we continue? Bloodwave Supreme stepped forward and asked, waving his hand to incorporate Longbei's head into the Qianquan ring. Jian Wushuang groaned. "Now that the divine power universe has fallen, continue to rush forward. I am afraid that it will run into the army of the virtual universe. We are here to wait for reinforcements." "Reinforcement? We still have." Bloodwave Supreme was uncertain. Jian Wushuang nodded. "If the reinforcements don't come, well, ask. For example, now that the dragons have returned to the virtual universe, we will go to ask for one or two." What if they ignore us?" Shuebu Supreme asked. Jian Wushuang calmly said, "If the cliffs are clear, or if they are sensible, I will not hold them to surrender. If they openly express their position of surrender, then they will be killed." Bloodwave Supreme felt coldness between the neck and neck, and the feeling that Jian Wushuang gave him was just following the words and saying that killing the entire family would definitely fulfill his promise. Out of the giant hall in the base camp, Bloodwave Supreme led more than 10,000 disciples of the life shrine to the base camp and settled down. Jian Wushuang injected his own two ancestors, Tianmen and Tianmenjiu, into the stone that can hold everything, and gave it to the supreme guardian of Bloodwave. At the same time, he first cast Zingehuhe Jianyani. It was poured into Nashi and handed over to the Great Axe for safekeeping. With these three styles, Jian Wushuang is confident. If it is not for the ancestors, even the half-ancestors will have to hate the spot. In the base camp, he left the Bloodwave Supreme, and guarded by the Giant Axe Heavenly Supreme. So if there is a crisis, he can definitely support the Sword Wushuang back. Entrusted to everyone, Jian Wushuang took Laozuan and set off on the way to the dragon. The land of the dragons is so vast that it almost occupies the largest area of stars in the entire ancient divine universe. They enjoyed the most perfect resources, but they surrendered first in the War of Catastrophe. Jian Wushuang did not know how many star powers had surrendered, but there was one calculation, and it was time to liquidate. Wanyi, the oldest flood star field, is the core star field of the dragon family. Only when the people reach the supreme divine realm can they continue to practice and live. It is rumored that the Wanya star field contains the most pure core of the divine power in the entire divine universe. During the day of cultivation, it arrived a century on Earth. The sword unparalleled is straight to Wanya Starfield. On this journey, the sword has no eyes, and nearly half of the Star Kingdom fuckingdom is either destroyed or exhausted, or it is still resisting. ordinary monks without strength can only desperately wait for the monster that breaks in their respective star fields. Going all the way, Jian Wushuang killed all the way. On the battlefield, which had only trace-level virtual respect, now there is a steady stream of star-level virtual respect like ants. Looking at the evil deeds they have created, Jian Wushuang has long shown no mercy to them, and waving his hand is to destroy the stars and traces. Until coming to Wanya Starfield, Jian Wushuang had no idea how many monks in the Void Universe had been killed and how many starfields had been saved. At this moment, he was full of anger. This oldest and vastest starfield shows no sign of invasion, and it is very peaceful. Who dares to break into the forbidden area of the dragon race and leave quickly to avoid death? From time to time, Long Way to the towering front door emerged, as if driving away flies slap on Jian Wushuang's body. Okay, Great Majesty. Jian Wushuang smiled angrily, and Tai Luo's Excalibur was already in his hand. Today I will see when your dragon clan can hide. The vast divine power is completely condensed on the Taro divine sword, and the divine power floating in the universe is concentrated under this sword. Broken, the roar is like divine punishment. The sword that has already exceeded the rules has directly caused the sky to collapse, and the starry sky to collapse. Only one sword, magnificent, a sword that stood up to the sky, straight to the towering main gate of Wanya Starfield. As in the last days, the main gate collapsed in an instant, and the sword swept across the earth, directly overturning the mountains and rivers, turning the river and the sea, and changing the sky. 1,000,000 miles, nothing more. Who did it? The roar of the endless long way sounded, a dark golden dragon standing up against the sky, and a star-sized dragon. I looked at Jian Wushuang. The dark-colored golden dragon's left arm was cut off by Qi Zhen, and the colorful blood of the dragon's blood flowed endlessly. He was originally stationed at the main gate of Wanya Starfield and spent every day indoors. Where would anyone think that someone would call the door like this if he is not alert? I am afraid that a dragon head would have to be cut off. But he kept his restraint as much as possible and did not release the overbearing Long Way. He is not a fool. He can destroy Wanya Starfield 1,000,000 miles with one sword, and he can easily cut off his arm. It is by no means what he can counter. Jian Wushuang put away the Taro magic sword and said obliquely, "The Lord of Life Jingu Palace, Jian Wushuang comes, let your ancestors roll out." You are wanton. The dark golden dragon can no longer bear it, and the pride of the dragons makes him rush to the sword unparalleled. With a cold hum, the invisible sword intentions emerged quietly, facing this dark golden dragon, chopping off it. Without any sound, a huge dragon, heads staring at each other, was in the hands of Jian Wushuang. The dragon corpse without its head was planted into the void with the last inertia. Carrying the dragon head in this way, Jian Shou's sword carried Lao Zun and broke into Wanya Starfield. The monstrous dragon's blood was sprinkled on the ground, and the dragon's corpses fell tragically on the mountain stream. Jian Wushuang no longer knows how many dragon descendants have been killed, and the dragon heads in Qianquan Ring have already piled up a bunch. When the descendants of the dragons who came under containment did not intercept and kill them, Jian Wushuang put away the Taro sword in his hand. Take me to see your old ancestors. If not, then I will visit one by one. Jian Wushuang said in a cold voice. His body shook, and the countless dragon blood fell. All the descendants of the dragon clan have trembled, and no one dared to step forward to intercept and kill WWW, the novel, but spontaneously vacated away. Jian Wushuang didn't speak, and his body was galloping. Mountains and rivers gradually disappeared, replaced by a statue of a dragon standing on top of the sky. This is the forbidden area of the dragons. Since the beginning of chaos, only swordsman has set foot here. On each dragon statue, there is a breath of extreme beauty, which belongs to the semi-ancestor class. And in this statue of the dragon, a bluestone-paved boulevard leads directly to that side of the Temple of Heaven. Divine power was dissipated, and the sword Wushuang walked towards the avenue step by step closer to the Zhetian Giant Hall. The dragon statues on both sides seemed to come alive, and various extreme dragon breaths built a yellowish atmosphere and swept towards the giant hall. Jian Wushuang grinned. Visit the Temple of Life and look at the budding mouse generations. Come and see. Chapter 46:12. The voice of blessing of divine power, like Hongzhong and Delu, resounded completely for 9 days and 10 places. Jian Wushuang was not afraid, and said louder than, "Visit the Temple of Life, and look at all the budding rats. Come and see." Nearly 100 golden dragons tore the sky, spontaneously blocked Jian Wushuang, and the dragon's breath rose skyward. After only a brief glance, he found that all of these golden dragons were actually supreme divine realms, and even more sneer. And among these nearly 100 golden dragons, a dragon whose scales scattered colorful mang shadows bowed down from the sky, and the Tyrannosaurus surged, shot. You know, this is the forbidden area of the dragon clan, and within 3 days of death we will confess our death. I will not pursue it. Jian Wushuang glanced obliquely, holding the palm of his hand directly and holding it firmly. At that moment, the colorful dragon, entangled in the air, as if held by his neck, fell into a miserable shape. The Tai Luo Excalibur was already in hand. When the sword Wushuang was about to decapitate it, the clouds suddenly collapsed, and a huge amount of dragon's breath fell. Even Jian Wushuang had to avoid the sharp edge in the dragon's breath, flowing down like a waterfall. The sacred dragon breath spreads the sky and shelters all the descendants of the dragon race. At the same time, a huge red gold, I chased through the clouds and looked at Jian Wushuang. 10 minutes away, leave quickly. This is not where you should come. The extremely old voice seemed to wake up from his deep sleep, warning him. Jian Wushuang dismissed, with a smile, every land in the divine universe is accessible to the people of the divine universe. Why can't you hear? And who rules outsiders not to enter? What if I don't go here? Ignorant child, since you are looking for death, then I will fulfill you. The red gold I wheel in the cloud suddenly condensed, and the mighty dragon was mighty. A dark golden dragon. Head appeared to carry the power of the entire star field and appeared on the sky. Jian Wushuang looked up at the Shengwei Jinlong indifferently, and it was already clear in his heart that he had gone through the first war of catastrophe. At the same time, the giant claws covered with ancient scars, like the pillars of Optimus, rolled down towards the sword unparalleled. Lao Zun took a step forward, and the scepter formed by the black water in his hand was about to stop, but was stopped by the sword, unparalleled. Let's do it. I can handle it. After Jian Wushuang said this sentence, the vast divine power rose from his body and ran directly into the dragon and the giant claw. Oh, the energy of the two was enough to destroy the sky and the ground, and the detonation produced directly swept the clouds, and the descendants of the dragons who were gathered together were also detonated from a distance. Both hands were closed at the same time. The stone avenue under Jian Wu's feet had cracked into a large pit, and half of the scales on dragon's claws with dense scars were shattered. Dragon blood spread out of the scales and then disappeared. Silence, with plenty of time to rest. The dragon's figure hovering over the sky slowly dissipated, replaced by an old man wearing a black gold suit and white hair. I do not know how many long chaos of the chaos period have fallen asleep, reawakened again, belonging to the majesty of the 3 generations of blood. Let all the descendants of the dragon family kneel to the ground. Long Ling stood in front of the main gate of the heavenly giant hall, shining Jinmang's eyes staring at Jian Wushuang. "I have seen you." The old yet majestic voice sounded from Long Yan's mouth. Jian Wushuang said indifferently, "See, I have seen it naturally, but the situation of meeting several times is as unpleasant as it is now." Long Yan snorted coldly. Before his figure stepped, the monstrous Long Wei squeezed out, "You kill my people and destroy me 1,000,000 miles in the star field depending on the dignity of the dragon people." Jian Wushuang heard a laugh and said, "When will your dragon clan have face? Isn't it that you will only lie in the nest and suppress the rats of the universe? Stand down, look for death." The fury descended like a heaven punishment, and Long Yao slammed his sword at Wu Shou with one palm. The giant claw imaginary tears the space, and the powerful force almost instantly blocks all his escape routes. Jian Wushuang still stood in place, facing the repressive palm. He just pulled out the Taro Excalibur and made a stroke. As the ice and snow melted, the mountains, snow, and wind and smoke, the most overbearing dragon's breath seemed to drown in the sea and dissipate directly. Understate that broken Long Wei was broken, and the sword unparalleled stepped towards Long Yuan. As early as the first battle of the Holocaust, it has achieved the invincible and supreme state of the dragon. Now that it is in the forbidden area of Zulong, its strength is comparable to that of the semi-ancestor. But somehow, when he saw this ant-like figure step by step, he suddenly had an inexplicable sense of crisis. However, this absurd idea was quickly thrown away by him. The ants are ants, and one can shake the dragon? As soon as he thought about it, Long Ling took another step again, and the vast dragon surged up in breath, transforming his life into a golden dragon and slamming into the sword unparalleled. He was convinced that Jian Wushuang couldn't stop the blow anyway. I don't know where the frost, like vines, sprung up to form a magnificent prison cage. Taro Supreme's treasured face, which is chic in all things, emerges behind Jian Wushuang. The wine line enters the throat and turns into the purest Taro sword, straight forward. The bluestone-paved avenue shattered from the middle, and the ground collapsed. The golden dragon that came out of nowhere, when it touched Tai Luo Jianni, cut it in half from the middle of his eyes instantly. The dragon's breath is broken, and the golden dragon vanishes. Long Yu took a step back. His body and blood surged. His destiny dragon soul was broken, and he also suffered a mild back injury. Facing the earth that was almost plowed, Jian Wushuang stood up and swept straight towards Long Yan. Regardless of rectifying qi and blood, Long Yan also made a move to deal with it. Huihong Tianmen doesn't know when it will appear, and one of the giant fingers of the sky suddenly comes from behind the door, rolling down. Dragon Crest, who had already climbed Dragon's Breath to be enough to fight with the semi-ancestors, had the purest sense of repression after seeing the giant fingers above him, making him like a falling ice cave. The ancestral art that can only be mastered by the gods of the universe. I hit my head like this now. The defense that had just risen was crushed directly, and Long Ling even had no time to make a sound, and then completely disappeared into the magnificent miracle. The earth was completely broken, and after the might of God was scattered, a huge pit was left behind. After seeing this scene, the descendants of nearly 100 dragons will immediately come to see it. Lao Zun, standing in place, quietly slammed the black water scepter, invisible ripples like a barrier, directly blocking all dragon descendants. In front of the giant pit, Jian Wushuang whispered, and saw the depth of the giant pit, and slowly raised a figure. The crystal dragon's blood flowed down the wound, which was deep enough to reach the bone. At this moment, the dragon's body shape was already fragmented, and most of the dragon scales covering it had been broken. Looking at this almost dying figure, Jian Wushuang did not rush to shoot, but said lightly, "Do you want to ask why?" Chapter 46:13. Long Yen did not speak, and a pair of dragon eyes stared at him. However, Jian Wushuang's next sentence was to tremble him, as if the most secret things were made public. Why do you dragons return to the void universe? A short sentence is like a thunderbolt. Long Yen lips said, "You, how did you know?" Jian Wushuang coldly said, "Because of myself. In the base camp of the extraterritorial battlefield, I saw a person who should not have seen and knew these things. Long Yen seemed to have lost all his strength and lost his soul. Where is Long Bai now? Because of your wrong decision, Long Bai paid the price he should pay." Jian Wushuang said, reaching for a ring of Qian Kuan. Long Bai's lifeless head appeared in Long Yan's eyes. "My brother!" Long Xian rushed, but was blocked by Jian Wushuang's wave. "Shuzi, you are going to fight against my entire dragon clan." Dragon sobbed blood and set foot. Jian Wushuang silently, after a long while, said, "I never thought of being an enemy of the dragons for a while. Even then, and now, I have never thought about that. It's you who pushed the entire dragon race to despair. I thought that surrendering to the virtual universe would save the real strength of the dragons. As everyone knows, the cold of the teeth will be the real disaster for your dragons." Jian Wushuang said coldly, "Everything I do today is to wake you up. Tell me why you surrender." Long Yen receded, his eyes shed tears. "Now that the magical universe has fallen and the of the universe has died, you tell me who can resist the virtual and the virtual universe without surrender?" "Stupid," Jian Wushuang hated. "Did you really know nothing about the cold lips? For half of the living space, you are willing to endure such humiliation. Do you think that the divine power has fallen? Even if you are a dog in the enclosure, will others want you? If you kill canines, they think you will not bite." After that, Jian Wushuang waved his hand and condensed a picture. It was a scene in a base camp outside the field, and Long Bai, who was wearing a long shirt and suit, sat down and looked iron blue. The strange noise of Shangxue sounded. "As long as you bring 10 dragon women to this seat, the original jurisdiction of the dragon will remain unchanged, and you can choose the 7 domains for your own use." There was a humiliation and anger in Long Bai's eyes, but he put up and arched, "It's a big deal, and Long Bai must go back and ask the ancestors for their opinions." The pride and dignity brought about by the ancients of the dragons were completely destroyed in such a short conversation, and they stepped on the soles of their feet. Looking at the picture, Long Bai sat back to his original place in a desperate state. The heart of the dragon was dripping blood, and the dragon's eternal arrogance was also in this humiliation, completely annihilating the Tao heart. The screen goes to the end. When Long Bai was about to die, he said his last persuasion, "Tell my elder brother, don't go on wrong." "My brother!" Long Ling cried, and the world changed. Holding the head of Long Bai with divine power, Jian Wushuang gently pushed it to Long Yu. "Even if you surrender to the virtual universe, they will not let you go like this. They will slowly eat away the entire dragon race. Despite the fall of the divine power universe, there is still a possibility of its rise. I don't want your dragons to go completely on this path. Even if it coexists with the divine universe, what is it? This is our glory and a necessary mission." Jian Wushuang said calmly, "If the contrary, your best case is to be enslaved, and your enslaved children, will you curse your ancestors who make decisions, be the scum of Hao, the old thief?" Long Yen shuddered and seemed to be unable to bear any more, spitting blood, no longer proud in his eyes. He was old and lonely. "You called Jian Wushuang, right? Is that little guy in the Temple of Life?" Long Yen slowly spoke. Jian Wushuang responded, "Yes." Long Yuan nodded. His murky eyes filled with relief. The old man was taught. The next moment, Long Yen suddenly slammed his palm like a knife and chopped his neck. Then a head fell into the abyss of the crater. volunteer to disperse as a self-cultivating dragonfly, transforming into a golden dragon and slowly falling. Because everything is coming too fast, when the sword Wushuang reacts, Long Yen has already disappeared. Jian Wushuang was silent, looking at the corpse of the golden dragon scattered in the giant pit to repair the dragon's breath, and whispered, "Giants! Once ancestors." Hundreds of dragon descendants saw this scene and wept with tears. Jian Wushuang motioned to Lao Zun to remove the barrier, and the dragons in the periphery would go crazy in front of the giant pit and kneel heavily on the ground. Did this trip to the dragon tribe end like this? Jian Wushuang looked at the descendants of the dragon tribe kneeling on the ground and could not bear the punishment. At this moment, there seems to be a long bell at dusk, and countless yellowish qi rushes into the heavenly hall. The two heavenly gates slowly widened. A dim figure waved away, and then signaled the sword Wushuang to come. Without any hesitation, Jian Wushuang and Lao Zun stared at each other, even though they swept towards the heavenly hall. Stopped outside the gate of the palace, Jian Wushuang could faintly see. The obscure figure was a middle-aged woman. The woman was wearing a plain shirt, and two left and right arms were entangled with two Xianhuang qi. When Jian Wushuang came, she signaled, "Follow me." After that, the woman first entered the giant hall. Jian Wushuang undoubtedly had him, and also stepped into the giant hall. Stepping in, the ripples symbolizing the enchantment spread slightly and then returned to calm. The strong dragon's breath permeates every inch of space, and even Jian Wushuang feels the sense of oppression. This giant hall is very strangely arranged. To the center of the whole hall, a giant pillar that seems to border the sky is erected. On top of this giant pillar, there is a red gold dragon that is almost as tall as the giant pillar. Each leaf is twice as large as Jian Wushuang, which is full of pure gold. Meaning, Holy Dick, the middle-aged woman with her hands full of mysterious spirit, respectfully said, "Old ancestor, the guest is here." The huge red gold scales began to move, and the golden dragon entangled above the giant pillar began to move. Xianhuang qi is even more intense. A dragon head beyond imagination seems to hang from above 9 days, and a pair of dragon eyes is like 2 star fields, reflecting the sword unparalleled figure. And the mysterious yellow air is sprayed from the nostril of this unimaginable dragon. "Welcome your arrival. I am the ancestor of the dragon clan. You can also call me Linha." Jian Wushuang's heart shook slightly. He realized that the ancestral dragon emperor in front of him had already surpassed the semi-ancestor level. Chapter 46:14. After returning from a little shock, Jian Wushuang arched his hand. The younger swordsman met the emperor of Linha. The giant dragon's head slowly nodded, and then the spotted Jinmang began to escape from the dragon body. Seeing this, the middle-aged woman hurriedly said, "Old ancestors must not." The entire dragon body entangled on the giant pillar began to illusion, and a moment-old man in a plain shirt was gathered. 2 huge dragon horns seemed to confirm his almost endless life. "Our ancestor, you should continue to nurse. How can you leave again?" The middle-aged woman expressed anxiety. The old man named Linha Dragon Emperor smiled. "Anyway, the old man's old illness is not a day or 2, and it is necessary to add some more." The middle-aged woman shook her head helplessly and did not say anything, following the old man. "Xiaoyu, you have met the non-dragon outsiders for the first time since that war." Linha Dragon Emperor and martyrdom, the inherent pride of the dragon tribe, was missing from him. As if it were another, the ordinary old man has drawn the distance between the two invisible. Jian Wushuang thought for a moment, and then said, "Is this the first battle of catastrophe?" "It's much longer than that." As if in memory, the Emperor Linha shook his head and smiled. "That war was a war between our 3 dragons, phoenixes, and unicorns. My old illness was also left in that war. Little friend, do you know that before me, cosmic luck could only have one ancestor? Jian Wushuang heard the words and was slightly puzzled. Isn't it possible to have only one? The Emperor Linha smiled and shook his head. At that time, I was still a youth, and my father was the ancestor. However, before the battle of the three races, I suddenly did not know where he was, leaving me with an ancestor, Qi Yun. At the end of the speech, the Emperor's palm of Linha showed. A unique but more mysterious atmosphere emerged from the dragon clan. With the appearance of that mysterious atmosphere, including the sword dance pair, the divine power in the body suddenly felt a kind of shivering suppression. That was the true luck of the ancestors. The Emperor Linha looked at the ancestral fortune in his hand and whispered, I wanted to appreciate the luck that my father left, but the war between the three races followed, and my body was left in that war-dark illness, ultimate I can no longer break, through the ancestors. Now, Lin Halongdi looked at Jian Wushuang and waved his ancestral energy into his hands. He should have a master. Jian Wushuang trembled, almost at the same time as the middle-aged woman. It must be... Old man, that's the foundation of our dragon family. The middle-aged woman hurriedly said, You gave an outsider, what should we do? Shut up, said the Emperor Linha. Unpleasant. Don't talk too much. The middle-aged woman didn't dare to speak any more, but just forced her to look. The eyes of Xiang Jianshuang almost swallowed him. The sword smiled bitterly on both sides, and then firmly said, Senior, this is too expensive. I will not accept it anyway. If you insist on giving it away, I can only refute your face. The Emperor Linha did not make a stand, but said, Little friend, can I talk to you alone? Jian Wushuang nodded in answer, then asked Lao Zun to wait in place. The middle-aged woman glared at Jian Wushuang with a resentful glance, then swept out of the hall. Then Linha Dragon Emperor slowly moved forward with his sword. I don't understand. After a short while, Jian Wushuang asked. After hearing the words, the Emperor Linha answered the question and asked, Little friend, do you know why we fought in the battle of the three races, so that the foundation of my dragon race was destroyed, and can't we recover now? Sword Wushuang shook his head. Linha Dragon Emperor eloquently said, That's because the three of us at that time jointly found a heavenly ancestor-level luck. To compete for that luck, war inevitably broke out. As the most powerful dragon among the three races, it should have been easy to get that luck, but my father suddenly disappeared, leaving the dragons in a passive situation. Even so, I temporarily became the patriarch, commanding the entire dragon tribe, pushing the war to the climax. I had already entered that state with half a foot at that time, and I struck the Phoenix tribe, the Kylan tribe, and the Unicorn King of Kirin with my own strength and died shortly afterwards, and my serious illness was left at that time. The war hastily ended. I am still alive, but the serious illness at that time still affects me until now, and I know that there are not many days. The Emperor Linha said that he paused here, and then continued, but my dragon clan was so severely wounded that even today it cannot be fully recovered. The descendants of the clan are even more mediocre. So far, no one has realized that step, while the Fong and Kirin tribe have already recovered, and I can almost say that the ancestral luck is in the hands of the Kirin tribe. I still have fears when I live. Once I die, I am afraid that the dragon will soon be destroyed. The Emperor Linha showed his bitterness. So surrendering the virtual universe is my instruction. I just want the dragons to have a chance to live, but from now on, I should be wrong. Hearing this, Jian Wushuang also fully understood his meaning, pondered for a long while, and still firmly pushed the ancestral energy in his hand into the hands of the Emperor of Linha. I can't guarantee too much, but for one thing, as long as I'm alive, The dragons can only die on the battlefield. Jian Wushuang's bland words were like vows. When the Emperor Linhe heard the words, the dragon's head was instantly red, and he bent his knees to salute, and Jian Wushuang hurriedly stopped it. The old man has accepted the love of the little friend. Today, this luck, if the little friend delays again, I will have no face. Linhe Longdi gave up his ancestral atmosphere, determined. Jian Wushuang was dumb. He really didn't want to accept it. After all, he was very far away from the half-ancestor class. So he resolutely accepted it, not to mention the use of his own, but to bear the love of the dragon family first. In this way, it took trouble in disguise to take over the broken things of the dragon and the other two races. But looking at the resolute look of Linhe Dragon Emperor, Jian Wushuang could only accept it for the time being, adding the last sentence, "This is just for me temporarily. If there is a timeless arrogance in the dragon family, I will return it." Linhe Longdi understood the meaning of Jian Wushuang's words, and there was a gloom in his eyes. I said before that as long as I live, the dragons can only die on the battlefield. Now, the two sides of the universe are completely endless, and fighting together is the most important thing to do now. Jian Wushuang said, "I am here this time, that S.Y." The Emperor of the River heard the words and solemnly said, "From this moment on, all the descendants of the Dragon Clan will let their friends dispatch them to fight the virtual universe to the last moment." Chapter 46:15. Jian Wushuang said, "It's not to be ordered by me. We have the same enemies. The dragon and the Temple of Life can resist each other as allies. A soldier without a general is like a dragon without a head." The Emperor of Linhe shook his head, and then gave him a crystalline and round heart-protecting scale, and gave it to him. All dragons. Jian Wushuang no longer quit, and after incorporating the true order into the Qianqun ring, he said, "Now that the dragons are back, it is also time for me to return to the extraterritorial battlefield to deploy." Linhe Dragon Emperor nodded, and then said, "Little friend, as far as I know, the Feng tribe has completely surrendered to the virtual universe. You must beware of one or two at that time." Jian Wushuang heard his words and frowned. "The Phoenix tribe also surrendered. What about the Kirin tribe?" "The Kirin tribe has been fighting hard since the beginning of the Holocaust. I once sent the descendants of the dragon tribe to support them, but they were rejected," Linhe Longdi said, taking a deep breath. He groaned. "Now, it seems that I'm going to see the Feng family again." Linhe Dragon Emperor wanted to stop talking, and finally spoke with Jian Wushuang. Walking out of the forbidden area of the Dragon Clan, Jian Wushuang looked back at the sky, and finally left Wanya Starfield with Lao Zun. After learning about some ancient secrets and the return of the Dragon Clan, Jian Wushuang's heart was relieved. With the full participation of the dragons, the high-end battlefield can be pulled back almost instantly. The divine power universe is not the universe of the life shrine, but the universe of all the monks of the people. If there is no other force to join, it will be difficult to survive. Leaving from the Wanya star field, Jian Wushuang immediately rushed to the star field where the Feng tribe was located. Since the fall of the divine power universe, the power of the void universe has almost penetrated halfway, and the downright starfighters have begun to furiously seize it. Numerous star domain fuckingdoms have been destroyed. At the same time, there is no shortage of deadly battles and returning star domains. And the power that symbolizes the power of the universe. Only 3 ancient races, there are 2 surrenders. How can this make the sword unparalleled? Qishao. It is one of the oldest superstars in the divine universe and belongs to the jurisdiction of the Phoenix tribe. It is rumored that there are 10,000 rounds of scorching sun in the Qishao constellation. Under the light of the scorching sun, the Phoenix carries out fiery nirvana to achieve the supreme state. After traveling for more than half a year, Jian Wushuang came to Qishao Starfield. On this way, the large and small star fields are more or less occupied by the forces of the virtual universe, except that the Feng and the dragon are similar, and there are no traces of virtual respect. As the front gate of the Qishao star field, 10 suns hung above the star field, emitting a burning flame. Jian Wushuang didn't feel the slightest discomfort. He took out the Tai Luo divine sword, and it was like breaking the Wanya star field of the dragon clan. One sword destroyed the mountains and rivers of Qishao. Several phoenixes who arrived came to death under that sword. The only thing that made Jian Wushuang feel a bit troublesome was that every disciple of the Feng tribe would ignite fierce nirvana when he was seriously injured, and then resurrected. After completely solving several Feng disciples, Jian Wushuang strode in the Qishao star field. Who dares to break into the forbidden area? On the crimson sky that was illuminated by nearly 100 rounds of the sun, a phoenix with wings spreading nearly 100 feet covered the sky. Swordless pair of eyes narrowed slightly, and the palm pressed on the handle of Tai Luo began to tighten. However, the imaginary assassination scene did not appear. The huge phoenix carried the momentum of the sun, and after hovering for a moment above Jian Wushuang's head, he turned into a handsome young man and fell in front of him. Are you from the Temple of Life? Junie Youth looked at Jian Wushuang a little uncertainly. Jian Wushuang was slightly surprised, but still nodded. After hearing the words, the Junie Youth did not say more, and he simply tilted his head and said, "Follow me. Our ancestors have been waiting for your life shrine for a long time." At the end of the speech, the Junie Youth reverted to the flames of fire, and the supreme divine power rose into the sky and turned into a flash of fierce horsepower and swept away. Although the Shrine of Life has always been a top force in the divine universe, it has not had much contact with the 3 dragons and phoenixes. At this moment, the Feng clan, who had surrendered to the virtual universe, not only did not care about Jian Wushuang, the master of the Palace of Life, destroying the star field, but seemed to be waiting for the arrival of the Palace of Life, which made Jian Wushuang a little puzzled. Without much guessing, Jian Wushuang and Lao Zun swept deeper along the trace left by the fire phoenix. As we move forward, there will be more and more big days above the sky. Until the last depth, the whole sky will be almost occupied by the day, and in a rough way, there will be no more than tens of thousands. Rao is the level of divine power of the sword, and also feels his throat dry. When reaching the deepest part of the Qishao star field, a giant temple covering the sky, which was not much smaller than the forbidden land of the dragons, appeared, and nearly 1,000 phoenix descendants lined up on both sides of the giant's hall, as if waiting for something. The soles of the feet fell to the ground, feeling the blazing temperature that could almost evaporate the ordinary supreme, and the sword unveiled his eyes naturally, the figure of 100 phoenixes circling in front of the temple of heaven. A dash, a long chime slammed into the clouds, the 100 phoenixes and phoenixes soared into the sky, and a total of 10 magnificent tail feathers left the stream of flames in the air, shocking. Just spreading his wings, Baizhang Fire Phoenix was almost before the sword was double-sided, and the flames flowing from the feathers almost sprayed on him. But Jian Wushuang didn't panic, just looked at it calmly. A dash, the magnificent fire feathers flowing with flames receded, and a beautiful cheek appeared in the eyes of Jian Wushuang. I said, "Why you nerds don't hide? Because of your half-strength invincibility, aren't you afraid that this seat will burn you to ashes?" Although it was a gentle female voice, the spirit of Yinggu spurted out. Under that handsome cheek, the most imaginative, it is an extremely hot body that is half hidden under the great firewife. Wear well and get cold. Jian Wushuang reminded. You see, reading www.okanshu. Come, the savage cheeks of Ing Wujuan suddenly burst into flames. Oh, you guy, I thought I was a nerd, but I didn't think I would dare to tease me. Jian Wushuang was too lazy to talk nonsense with her and said directly, "Find out your ancestor. I have something to ask." "Why, do you just think so superficially? This isn't the ancestor of the Phoenix tribe." Junmei woman sneered. Jian Wushuang fainted for a moment. He was never expected. The ancestor of the Feng tribe, one of the top ancient clans in the divine universe, would be such a young and beautiful woman. Another stupid man bewitched by beauty. Aren't outsiders now so superficial? The beautiful woman side. Are you really the ancestor of the Phoenix tribe? Natural. Jian Wushuang sneered. That's good. I'm looking for you. Chapter 46:16. The tailored Excalibur, which can cut off the heavens of all things, came out of the sheath, and the sharp, sharp sword reached the neck of the ancestor of the Phoenix tribe. At this moment, nearly 100 Phoenix descendants transformed into huge wings at this moment and surrounded the sword unparalleled. The ancestors of the Feng family shrank their pupils, then calmed down. Sneer, "I thought you were a nerd, but turned out to be a fool." With this half-step invincible and supreme state, believe it or not, I burn you directly. After that, a huge phoenix totem rises from behind the ancestors of the Feng tribe, and the phoenix sings. While this seat is not yet angry, you can quickly go back and call the palace master of your life temple. She said in a deep voice, and there was no doubt in her words. Jian Wushuang said indifferently, "I am the lord of the palace of life." "Just you?" Feng, old ancestor, laughed. "You are? If you are really, then, with the strength of my sons and daughters of Feng, wouldn't everyone be the master of the palace of life?" Suddenly, all the children of the Phoenix tribe laughed. "If you are acquaintances, go back quickly and let your lord of the palace come to see me." She waved her hands. Her expression began to be impatient. At this time, a loud drink sounded. "You can't let him go, my ancestor. He just came to commit the crime and killed our 3 disciples." In a flash of time, the fiery flames sprang forth, and the ancestors of the Feng tribe were angry and rushed to the crown. I said why the Qixiao starfield was oscillating. I thought it was an unsightly mess. It turned out that you, a bad guy, had made a ghost, really looking for death. After that, the fire phoenix totem, suspended above the sky, opened his mouth and spit out the flames of extinction. The scent of fire belonging to the semi-ancestor class fell down, and even Jian Wushuang felt a burning sensation. Jian Wushuang did not dare to enlarging, and directly released the 4th season of the Tailu Sword Code. As a result, the unfavorable winter cold frost situation actually dissipated on this fiery land. The bursting flames fell, and the sword flew out without a hit. He waved his hand barely to extinguish the flames sticking to the clothes, and the sword had no double-sided color and began to condense. If this phoenix ancestor used his full strength just now, I am afraid he would suffer a minor injury. In other words, the offensive that broke the winter cold frost just now is less than the 5-point power of the ancestors of the Feng tribe. Folding down the enemy's heart, Jian Wu's eyes watched Shintai. A red gold pattern slowly emerged and began to flow around him. The old respect, who had been silently behind him, after seeing this scene, raised his eyelids slightly and then calmed down again. The ancestor of the Phoenix family, who was about to open his sword against the sword unparalleled, began to look dignified, and at the same time secretly muttered in his heart, "It shouldn't be. This boy is obviously invincible and supreme. Why does it give me a dangerous feeling? Pretend to be a ghost." The ancestor of the Feng tribe hummed coldly, then turned into a huge phoenix and rushed towards the sword, unparalleled. Golden eyes opened. An invisible blade, Yu Jianshuang's right hand condensed, facing the ancestors of the Phoenix tribe that came with endless power to sink and cut down. The heavens and the earth changed color. The earthquake shook, and the abyss of heaven shattered from under the sword. The sword is stretched for millions of miles, and the mountains and rivers are overturning, and the sun is dim. The phoenix ancestor who had turned into a phoenix flickered with fear in the eyes of the two pairs of phoenixes. She suddenly discovered that this kid was actually playing pigs and eating tigers. The ancestors of the Fong clan suddenly stopped in the air, and when they were preparing to avoid the sharp edge, they found in horror that all their outlets had been blocked by the pervasive sword. Damn bastard! The spiky bird's beak spit out the words. In desperation, the ancestor of the phoenix tribe grew up, and nearly 100 rounds of sun trembled at the same time, and the blazing sun fell into a sea of fire. The huge phoenix is in this sea of fire, enduring the pain of burning, nirvana fierce. A dash, the shrieking pierced the sky. The fire plume was brilliantly glorious, countless streamers and flames fell to the ground, and a giant phoenix nirvana-born with wings spreading the sky was born. Facing the vast sword, there was a round of big sun in Jufing's mouth, and they collided violently. The redness of Jean Mang was just a moment, and the fire area that had just formed was cracked in a large area. The Jean Mang sword meant not only the slightest loss, but it accelerated the chopping. Old ancestors. Almost 100 disciples of the Fong ethnic group all rushed over, but at the moment of raising their feet, they were blocked by an invisible barrier. Lao Zun raised his eyelids, paused with the Blackwater scepter in his hands, and went silent again, feeling the fragmentation of the realm. The feeling of lack of skills came back to my heart. The ancestor of the Fong tribe made a last long beep, then closed the eyes of the phoenix. When the vast sword smashed the last sea of fire, the endless power was stopped in front of her. Time seemed to stagnate, and after a while everything melted, snow, and ice disappeared. Jian Wushuang retracted his palm and said quietly, "Open your eyes. You are not dead." Phoenix eyes slowly opened, and the ancestors of the Fong tribe reshaped into human figures still hung high in the air, unable to believe that they were alive. Jian Wushuang looked up and saw what should not be seen, and quickly turned his eyes to the side. I wasn't dead." The ancestor of the Fong clan murmured softly, then stared at the sword unparalleled against the ground. With wings spread behind him, the ancestor of the Fong tribe appeared in front of him. I said, "Why didn't you kill me?" She gasped slightly, her chest undulating. Jian Wushuang glanced at her and said, "I have the ability to kill you, but I can't kill you now. I need to know an answer." "What is the answer?" "Why surrender to the void universe with your semi-ancestral strength and in your own territory? It is not difficult to resist," Jian Wushuang said. The ancestor of the Fong tribe was speechless and squeezed his lips tightly. I said that I was just surrendering and waiting for the opportunity. "Do you believe it?" "I believe." Jian Wushuang replied, simply 2 words. The ancestors of the Fong tribe were stunned, and then the corner of the mouth was raised with a beautiful arc. "I can be the master of the palace of life at this age, and it really has a thorough mind." Jian Wushuang ignored it and continued indifferently, "Since your Phoenix clan surely surrendered, you will immediately go to the extraterritorial battlefield and the Shrine of Life to jointly defend the enemy." "No problem." The ancestors of the Fong tribe were very straightforward, but the frontier turned around. "But I want to see if the Palace Master of the Life Shrine has that ability to help the Kirin tribe successfully resist the attack of the virtual universe. If you succeed, I can guarantee that the Phoenix will not die for the magical universe from now on." "Really? Really?" The ancestor of the Fong tribe firmly said. "The deal," then set off immediately. Jian Wushuang nodded and promised, turning and preparing to leave. Looking at the body without any muddle, her pair of phobias flickered, and then she exclaimed, "Wait for me!